Hi, everybody.
Hey, how you doing?
It's Becky with Vintage Viking Treasures. I have John Walk with me tonight. I also have Barb from Cowgirl Class.
Hello.
We are trying to figure out how to get her into the chat. So I know it'll take a little bit for everybody to get in and see the notification. And we got to get cameras set up because it's the first time we've done two people in the room. So it might take a little bit, but we're working on it. Hey, there's somebody here. Say hello. I'm going to try and digit. So what does yours say on there?
It's wanting me to do camera. Front camera. Here we go.
You can change the camera. Hey, we got two people watching.
That's where we need it.
Right.
Hey, everybody. How are you doing tonight? Say hello.
Now we're going to be able to see our stuff.
That's Jeff. How are you doing? You made it home from dinner. So we're going to try and set up her phone camera to be so that you can see glass. But I'm not seeing her in a room yet. It says invite. I'm participating. Are you on? You have to turn down your volume too. Are you on the Wi-Fi? Wi-Fi?
I don't know.
Your phone on Wi-Fi?
I don't know. Let's find out. We're going to read this again. Sorry.
I was trying to see if I could watch it on my tablet.
Oh, here we go. Do I put display name in?
Yeah, you can put your name in. And we'll see what we got going. So, if you're here, you know I'm Becky from Vintage Viking Treasures. We started this channel for collectibles. And hey, there you are. So do your volume. And her phone is going to show us all sorts of stuff. There we go.
Look, we may even get some glass on here.
All right. So is that close? Your volume is still wonky. So and then we'll have, we have to be closer because we're sideways now. We're a little less. We have to get right. So can get this out of there.
Didn't like that?
Hey, three people are here. You can move whatever you need to on that side.
I'm just trying to figure out if I'm going to need to eat.
Your volume has to be further down, first of all. It gets that feedback. Yeah.
I'm still getting feedback.
Well, you can't turn it down anymore?
No.
Is that any different?
Let's try.
No. I thought it'd be like our devices we do for live for Facebook. Once they're all the way down, you can't hear them. But hey, everything's new. We haven't done this before. And they were always going the opposite direction. It's fun to try and figure out. All right. Here, I think
Let's try this. It's saying automatically adjust mic volume. That might be it. Let's try this. Can we try this?
Yeah, it's still up.
Hello?
I don't know why you can still hear you so much. We shouldn't hear you at all. Because then it echoes into this one. And I don't know how it sounds for other people watching it. We got three people. One of them's Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
Why is that?
Is this better or worse? Because I had echo cancellation on and now it's off.
I don't know.
Better. Any change?
More. There's a way to do the light. Oh, here we go. Let's try this. That'll help a little bit. There.
That's better.
That's a little better. Is the feedback bad? Hi, Bria. How are you doing tonight? It doesn't sound too bad, Jeff? Okay, it just sounds like an echo to us then, or is it terrible to listen to? So that's I guess the question for the feedback. Or feedback on the feedback.
Do you have echo cancellation set on yours?
Oh, where is that?
It's
Show me where yours is.
Camera and mic settings. See the little settings button?
Mine has more.
Oh, well, you're special. Mine says mic cam.
Yeah, so this doesn't go.
Echo.
I know what else.
Do
Do you have a thing where you can plug in headphones for yours?
They plug into the same thing that everything else does. Do you mean to mute my mic so it just goes on yours? Let's try that.
That's what I was asking you to do.
Let's try this. I'm still getting it.
I know, that's why I'm saying it's, I don't know why yours has, if you've got your volume to nothing, why it's still got stuff coming through.
It's better? No.
It's the same thing. Mine's down as low as it can go. That's weird that yours hears me so bad. I don't know. Plus, if it's better out. Oh, that I muted my mic. My mic can't be muted though, because I'm the one streaming. So yours needs to be muted.
Mine's muted.
I don't know why it's.
You want me to leave and come back on?
No, because I will never find you back. All right. Well, if that's better, tell us how the echo is, and we'll go from there. So we'll continue with some introductions. I'm Becky with Vintage Viking Treasures. If you want to turn yours around and say who you are, Barb, show yourself.
Oh, I can't even get back.
Just turn your phone around.
Oh.
Just be like that. There you are. Say who you are.
That's Bob.
Well, I can see how bad
She's
I
the
look,
funny
so you
one
know.
in the group.
Looking anyhow.
It's gonna be fun tonight. Let me put it that way. So you are Barb
I am Barb.
with
Cowgirl class when I actually have half a brain and I'm not trying to fiddle with that camera and talk to you at the same time.
and we sell together on Facebook Lives, and we're trying to work on where we can get to make so that we can get to have live sales on YouTube as well. We do live shows, we did one in Alabama, we had one in Springfield, Oklahoma.
We got another big
Colorado.
one coming up in Alabama in November.
So we do those shows together. And this is John Walk. John, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm John Walk. I started in the antique business whenever I was 18 in the late 70s. I ended up in the late 90s through the early 2000s, publishing 9 books on Fenton Glass.
Okay. You want this for your...
They say I'm a Fenton expert. I don't know about that.
Does that help your stand or not?
We're going to find out.
Well, this is so much fun.
Now I see your shelves.
Oh, I'm just trying to keep it on the thing without falling off, right?
I
You got it?
Don't blow
Okay.
on it.
So, hey Greg, how are you doing tonight? I finally got the other video uploaded correctly. Hey Yvonne, how are you doing? So, if you've missed introductions, this is Mr. John Walk. Barb is with us from Cowgirl Class. Her name is Barb Garrison. Her camera over here is what we're going to be looking at for any glass we're putting up. So, basically, what kind of what started you writing books, Mr. Walk?
Just the dearth of knowledge on Fenton at the time that I started writing mine. The only thing that was really out on Fenton was Bill Heacock's 3 books, which was a lot of writing and very little pictures. I kind of had the idea of trying to lay out the Fenton line like Gene Florence did in his Depression Glass books, where it would show the majority of the pieces and colors along with the prices there, so people would actually know what they was looking for and could get a gist of how many items was in each line. And I started out my time period, the time period I always loved was the 1940 to 1960 time period. I started out doing that, and then the publisher wanted to on down the line more from the 1970s and 80s, and eventually then we also did the items that they did for the special orders. Fenton did a lot of items for other companies, other individuals. We did a book on the rarities. At the time I was working on my first working on my books, there wasn't that much demand for milk glass, and I didn't include milk glass in any of the books. There was kind of a hue and cry for it later on, and so I did a book on the Fenton milk glass and just kept on going and going and going.
So you have 9 books total?
9 books out on
And
Fenton.
how many years did it take you to do all those?
Actually started on the first book about 1995. It came out in 1998. The guy that did the photography on it, me and him, we kind of had disagreement. And so I ended up having to fire him, and we did the next book, which covered 1940 to 1960. We did that one, and I ended up starting to do the pictures on that one and all the other ones. Then we did 1960 to 1985, the Fenton Companion. The next one was the Fenton Companion 1985 to 2000. Did a book on Fenton rarities, which included the real rare items, the sample items, whimsy items. Then we did the book on Fenton milk glass. Then we did 2 special order books. And then finally we did the book to Fenton A to Z, which was kind of a combination of all the books put in together, showing pattern shots and updated prices on everything.
Now I know you have all your books are in Fenton, but Fenton's not the only glass that you have.
Oh no, I deal in all types of American-made glass from the Victorian time period right on up to the present. I also do a lot of antique quilts, linens, textiles, a lot of china and dinnerware like old china, home Lachlan, those were Cambridge, Harker. Do antique toys, just a little bit of everything. Well,
Hey, it wasn't my fault that time.
Doing this setup, so it's taking a little bit to generate everybody's cameras.
But my big love is American-made glass from the 20th century, and that's what I have really specialized in over the last 30 years.
Okay. Now I know for myself, I deal in anything vintage, collectible, mid-century, modern. Barb and I try and kind of keep focused on glass. I mean, specifically Fenton, a lot of Viking, LG Wright, anything that's pretty, basically that catches our eye that we think we have a market for. I also do vintage Christmas, and we sell from different venues. So we kind of specialize as to what we take to different sales based on what we think our focus is going to be. And for you as well, Barb, you pretty much
I do it all.
cover the gamut as well, right?
Plus all the Western, do a lot of cowboy and Indian type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
American Indian jewelry.
Wonderful turquoise jewelry.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And you dabble in quilts and linens as well, correct?
Probably am just as hot in quilts and linens and well known in the quilt circle as what I am in the glass circle.
I think probably the only thing that none of us do a lot of is ephemera. I mean, occasionally we pick up a little bit of paper. You do?
Paper stuff.
I haven't seen your paper stats.
No, you never have. So in the 80s, that's what I was really known for, was dealing in paper whenever you could actually find the good stuff in the early 20th century.
And now you do a lot of car.
I do a lot of automotive related. I set up at swap meets through the St. Louis area, doing nothing but vintage model car kits, built and unbuilt model car auto showroom brochures, manuals, ads, and just a little bit of everything on that aspect there.
So in talking about St. Louis, we should say that Barb and I are based in Colorado. Barb's just on the south side of in Parker, south of Denver, and I'm in Colorado Springs in Colorado, and John is visiting
I live about 70 miles out of St. Louis, Missouri, over in Illinois, and actually the first state capital of Illinois is Vandalia. I live about 10 miles out of Vandalia.
So we end up going back and forth between locations for different shows and stuff like that, and he's come out to visit for a couple weeks and do some snooping and reload some inventory. Serious
thrift shopping.
Yeah. So, okay, do you want to pick something we can, just out of Barb, out of our glass gallery over there?
Sure.
That we could,
Throw me a Lulu.
Let's start on, I don't know, pick something, whatever you like to go from, and we'll just start talking about stuff. Yeah. I mean, I think we have pretty much
you got a good
variety out here. Yeah. So you might, let's see how that looks, and then
yeah, that looks pretty good. That's a great piece. It's Cranberry coin dot. Fenton brought out coin dot in 1947 originally. They had a pretty big line. It didn't sell as well as what they thought, and so that they discontinued a lot of pieces after the last first year and a half that it was out. This is the 10-inch basket. They also did what they was about 10 inches in diameter, but was probably also about 12 inches deep basket, which is so god rare. It's not even funny to find there. But they did the coin dot and the cranberry like this. They did it in the French opalescent, which a lot of people call the clear opalescent or moonstone. They also did it in blue opalescent, and at that time they did it in a real pretty amberish opalescent color, which was called honeysuckle.
So are we starting at any certain end of Fenton production here, or we're just gonna?
They started in on that pattern in 1947, and they continued coin dot different times during the Fenton until they stopped production in 2011. They bring out coin dot at different times for limited deals. The regular coin dot production stopped in the late 50s.
Okay, so this is probably 20 years in.
You mean 20? You mean from the start of Fenton production?
Yeah.
Well, they started in 1905.
Okay, so I'm a little bit further.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was probably about right at 40 years.
Okay. All right.
What Fenton did, they kind of ran along with the trend of what was in demand in the decorator circles and everything. And then they actually created Carnival glass, and it was really hot. And around 1905, 1910, 1915. Then later on, in the early 1920s, they started in doing the stretch glass, which is iridized that's kind of stretched out to give that onion skin effect. Then they went with opaque, like the jade and periwinkle and different colors like that. Then when the depression glass came in big, they went in with the depression glass colors like the pink and green, the cobalt, amber. Then later on, they did some satin items. In the early 1940s, it was kind of the style was kind of beginning a throwback to the Victorian time period. Opalescent glass was big in the Victorian time period, so Fenton went in big time into production of opalescent glass, and they kept up with opalescent glass actually until the time they closed, but really big during the 40s and 50s.
Yes, Katie, they've made so many different things. I know Katie got your A to Z book. Is that a pretty good representation?
That's a good one. If you really want something to go with it, pick up the big book. And if you really like the 1940s, 1950s time period, pick up either the big book of Fenton, the 1940 to 1970, or the Fenton Companion, which is 1940 to 1970.
So it gives you
that'll give you a more in-depth look at that time period. Or if you like the 70s and the 80s, pick up the Fenton Companion from 70 to 85. If you like the later stuff that came out of it during the 90s, pick up the Fenton Companion 85 to 2000.
Or you can be like the rest of us, get a copy of everything, keep one set in your house, and keep one set in your car, and then you know what you're
And I still don't know of it.
I might know a guy who has a few books available, right?
Yep.
Okay. Do you want to switch this up
Yep,
and
let's
show us
switch this
another example of something Fenton-y?
Yeah, we'll do some of the Fenton Carnival.
Okay.
That's a very pretty piece. What did we say that was? Two flowers. Yeah. I'm not that well up. My expertise and my big deal on collecting and research went from 1940 on, actually now on up to the time that they closed, stopped production of glass in 2011. But I'm not that up on Carnival glass, but that's a very excellent representation of the Carnival glass that they did in the early 1900s.
So this is a cobalt base.
Yeah, that's cobalt base. They called those that type of foot as spatula foot.
Spatula?
Spatula or stage.
Spatula.
Okay.
Like you use in the kitchen.
Yeah, yeah.
They called that a spatula foot.
Okay.
They created a lot of beautiful patterns. They was in direct competition at that time with Northwood and Dugan in making Carnival glass. It was kind of like he who would sell more had the better patterns, and so they was in competition trying to sell more, come up with better patterns and more unique patterns and offbeat patterns. what a lot of people don't know, whenever the factory opened, there was 1905. There was 4 Fenton brothers. Frank, John, Robert, and I can't think of what the 4th one is
Oh, I should know.
off the top of my head. John, about 1910, broke off because he had a disagreement with the company, with the rest of the brothers, and he went to Millersburg, Ohio, and opened up Millersburg Glass Company, which made some exquisite Colonial glass. Unfortunately, his eyes was bigger than his stomach, and didn't have enough money, and the company went bankrupt after about 3 years. But in that time period, they produced some really great pieces, and it's very collectible. You hear now about a piece of Colonial glass going for 10,000 and more. It's usually a piece of Millersburg.
Okay. Now that's very common in lots of the glass companies where they merged or
Right.
they divided or
Right.
they had employees from another company, and it's almost like genealogy.
Yes,
trying to figure
you
out all
really
the
have to
companies.
know the genealogy. Luckily, I've always been in genealogy to be in with, so that was always a big interest of mine. And it's the same way with the molds. One company would fold, another company would buy molds. It would fold, or it would get tired of using those molds. The new company would be opening up, so they would sell them, or they would acquire them.
Yeah.
Fenton acquired a lot of molds from other companies over the years.
Katie's asking, when do you start seeing mold seams on Fenton? Like, did they always use molds from the very beginning?
They did pretty well in the 1920s. They broke off with a bunch of European craftsmen, and they did what they call freehand. Then they started doing that. It didn't go over very good, so they went back to the regular items in the molds. Then they went back to some freehand in the 70s, and finally, about 2000, Dave Petty, which had studied with Robert Berber in the 70s and made freehand glass, he started making freehand glass there at the factory, and that's whenever they really got into the freehand items big time. So
like on this carnival, you can see the mold marks pretty well. So it's got 3 mold lines. That means that the mold was a 3-part mold.
Yeah,
they put the
3-part mold.
Did they blow it into that, or did they
sometimes on the blown glass, it was blown into the mold. It would be gathered and put into the mold, and then they would have a blow-pipe stuck down into the top of the mold, and they would blow it. And then on the press stuff, it would be the gobble glass or the gather glass would be dropped down into the mold. And it, do you have that piece of Colonial glass again?
She's also asking, did they fire polish some of the mold?
Yes,
marks?
they would. But like the bottom part of the mold would be like this. And then the top part of the mold would actually have the pattern in it. And whenever they pressed it in, that's whenever the pattern would come.
So they'd have 3 parts at the bottom.
Yeah, 3 parts.
And then a plunger.
Plunger to come in on the top. Yes. Right.
And that's why so many of these bowls have like a plain pattern on here, and then they put different patterns on the inside, right? Because they have different plunger patterns.
Yeah.
And then outer pattern.
Some of there would be a double pattern, like the bottom part of the mold would be one pattern, and then there would be another pattern out there on top.
Okay.
What's always interesting to me on the bowls, you'd think whenever they make them, that mold would be shaped like a bowl. It's actually flat, and it comes out as a plate, and then they bring it up while the glass is still hot.
Yeah, and that's how they put the crimp in, too.
Yeah, and then they would add in the crimp after they bring up the bowl.
Okay. So here's the question. We said they polished some of their mold marks, right? But they did never, because they were producing so much.
Right.
It was so much going on. Sometimes it just wasn't a very fine.
Was not a fine. This was mass-produced art glass.
Yes.
This was kind of art glass for the masses, art glass for the common person.
Do we know like how many pieces? Like was it general? Just
no way to tell right now. There is some records, but they are not available to the public. I would love to get a hold of some of that stuff to actually find out how many was made. A lot of times, especially on the stuff from the 40s and 50s, of a real short line, I have my suspicions on how much was made, but I just can't verify it.
What was their most prolific time period where they made the most pieces of a run?
Oh, probably anywhere from the late 1940s on up into the 70s, and then it kind of died off because of the recessions and the financial deal at that time. Then it started up again about 1990, whenever they started doing items for QVC, and would go on until about 2005, 2006.
Okay.
Was probably their greatest production runs there of
Okay.
items.
Do they call it hand poured, or is it hand molded, or
Hand gathered.
Hand gathered. And that's the getting of the glass
Yeah.
out of the kiln
Mhm.
onto the pipe,
Right,
and then taking that and putting it in.
right. I was informed very sternly whenever I was writing my books by Frank Fenton, because I was letting him look at all the stuff in advance before it ever was down and onto paper. That I was using the terminology poured. If he wrote me a note, at Fenton, we do not pour glass, we gather glass.
Well, another thing that a lot of people might not know is the difference between hand blown, which you see in Fenton, and mouth blown.
Right. Yeah.
What's the difference
Now,
between that?
hand blown is kind of like, well, it's kind of hard to explain unless you have the items. The mouth blown is, like I said, you have the glass in the mold, and you have the mold shut, and then you have a blowpipe.
Well, that would be something like this, where they're putting a air pocket essentially
Right.
into the middle of a piece.
Right. Yeah.
Well, mouth blown is someone is literally blowing that with their.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hand blown means you essentially have an air pipe that's going in from the air compressor.
Yeah, air compressor, and it presses
Mechanically.
down mechanically, does it?
Blanco hand blow. I mean,
Yeah, but
yeah.
Blanco mouth blows most of their stuff.
Yes. That's what we saw in there.
And which is very, and what a lot of people don't realize with Blanco glass, Fenton's, all their molds was all metal cast iron. Blanco's molds is all wooden.
Oh, that was crazy to see that.
And they have their own forest, their own carpeting shop to carve out the molds, and their own forest to get the trees to make.
Oh, out of their own forest.
Yeah, out of their own forest.
Because I know that's why shapes like change a little bit. They get a little bit bigger because the mold itself kind of burns as it.
Well, on handmade glass, on any type of handmade glass, if you look at it, whether it's Fenton, whether it's Blanco, or anything like that is blown, or even if it's pressed in the mold, it never comes out the same, never comes out uniform.
Yeah.
There'll always be a difference in the riffle from piece to piece and everything like that. That's what makes it so fun, but so many people get confused because they think everything ought to look uniform and ought to go right along the previous piece.
So it's more uniform coming out of those metal molds than it is the wooden ones.
Right.
Okay. Katie's asking, how do you know the older pieces of glass versus the 70s pieces?
Buy books and research and know your shapes. Fenton had, and the big book of Fenton, and whenever I did the book on Fenton rarities, in the front of both of them, I had the basic mold shapes that Fenton was using at that time period. There, in the big book of Fenton, they covered the 1940 to 70, and I had the basic mold shapes with what in the front, with what colors they use and what patterns they use, and then what shapes would come out of those molds. There, and then later on, instead of they was called mold numbers at that time in the early 40s, out the 40s, and then later on in the 50s, they changed it over to wear numbers, where each individual piece had a number.
Okay, and then they started putting their mark
and
on the glass.
Starting in about starting in whenever they started doing carnival glass in '69, because they had such a hue and cry about from the collectors of carnival glass, you're going to ruin our market. And Frank Fenton thought enough of the collectors and was a collector himself. They decided to start in marking, but it took about 5 years altogether to get all the molds with a mark.
That's a long time. And then they kept their mold marks like for a decade or so, and then they changed them again.
The original marking was a Fenton and a logo. It didn't have no numbers on it at all.
Okay.
And then in the 80s, they had an 8. 90s, they had a 9. And then, of course, in 2000, they had a 0. And then I think in 2001, I don't know, I can't remember, 2011, whenever that, right before they stopped making, I can't remember whether they did it with a 1 or 11, one of the two.
So then pre-mold marks, they had those stickers.
Yeah, they had the stickers, but like I said, your best bet is to buy books, have books in front of you, and learn your shapes.
Yeah.
Because they would vary from shapes on a whimsy items or experimental items. Of course, those are the fun things to find. And they would vary from shapes and change the ruffle and everything like that. That's the nice thing about handmade glass. You can, especially if you have the crimping machine where you can make a ruffle, you can make just about any type of a shape, pull it up or flatten it out.
You want to tell us a little bit about these two that have been
Okay, these are tumblers. The color on the opalescent one is cameo opalescent. I always like to call it root beer opalescent, but it's cameo opalescent. It was first done in the 1920s.
Oh, you can see the fire too.
Oh yeah, the formula was actually a variant of chocolate glass, and that was a deep dark secret with Fenton. The other one is Celeste blue stretch glass. It was done in the 1920s.
This is a stretch?
Yeah, that is a stretch.
It doesn't feel like a normal stretch.
It's a very light stretch effect on it.
Because the stretch sometimes feels really rough.
Yeah, really rough.
Almost feels smooth.
But it was very light stretch on it there. But the tumble ups was made to put by the bedside, and you would have a little tumbler with them. You get those in the evening. You could get a drink. Overnight, you could get a drink. There's a piece with the rough stretch effect. And some of that is just beautiful. That's a very unusual shape. You hardly ever see that real little tiny flip base either.
You can kind of see an onion skin look to how, is it a chemical that they put on the glass?
Yeah, it's the gas that they put onto the gap. And then they kind of give it a stretch too and give it a pull up.
And as it pulls up into the ruffle and stuff,
that gives it that more onion skin effect.
It gives it that look. Okay.
That's the difference between stretch and carnival. Carnival is sprayed after it's shaped, whereas stretch is sprayed before it.
Question on these, because we're talking a tumble up or a guest set, but you had a one that was filled with bath salts at the last show.
That's a tumble up.
That's a tumble up.
Yeah,
Did they market them that way?
Yes, they marketed. Yeah, they called them tumble ups. A guest set is like a water pitcher that has the tumbler that fits inside the opening.
Oh, duh. I know. Okay, so there's a difference.
Yeah, there is a difference in terminology.
So what came with with the bath salts in it? What did they?
That was a unique one because when I found that one on eBay, that was made for Risley Company in the late 1930s. I always thought they just sold the tumble ups themselves, like in gift shops and whatever.
Yeah.
But that one was made special in blue opalescent rib optic, like the cameo opalescent rib optic is. But that one was made and then sold to Risley, which they put the bath salts in, sealed down the top.
Okay. All right. So
then they put the sticker on it. Yeah, there was a second.
Which is similar to like the lamps. They'd make the lamp
right.
and send them on the lamps, and they just never knew.
Yeah, well, so many people did not. That's another thing. So many people did not realize that Fenton did not have their own lamp department where they put together lamps until 1967. But they made lamp parts, which any individual little mom and pop company could buy and put it together any way that they wanted to with their own metal and everything. So there's no way to really document any of the lamps prior to 1967.
Too wide of a
because there was probably about 600 or 700 different little companies that would buy lamp parts off of them. They're all over the years.
Okay. What else do you have for us, Barb?
We've got some of the 1930s etches.
These are the satin glass pieces they did in the 1930s. They would do them in crystal and satinize it, or they do it in pink and green. They all had various different patterns. That one is what they call Ming, that first one that used it.
This one?
No, the other one.
Oh, okay. Both of these are Ming.
So these are actually the same bowl with different shapes.
And George and Nancy Fenton, we have asked them different times at Glass ID during the Fenton Convention how they did that and get that molded sponge effect on the Ming, and they can't even figure it out.
And this one is this one?
That is that? No, that isn't.
That's Silvertone.
Silvertone, thank you. Because we had Silvertone, we had Ponzetta. You get a real unique one. There is one with a tree scene on it. It's called Scenic. Just whatever price you see a piece of that in at, just smile and say thank you and buy it quickly.
Yeah. There are a few things you're just like, I know it's something. I'm just going to take it and
whatever.
Figure it
Yeah, there's a few patterns in that the satin that is just so god rare. It's not even funny.
Now, is there something that Fenton did exclusively to Fenton manufacturing, like nobody else kind of did it, or did everybody always pretty much copy each other?
They would cutthroat on copying. Even whenever all the other companies saw, like in the Fenton hobnail in the 1940s and the opalescent, that it was becoming really popular. Westmoreland developed their own hobnail pattern, which they produced in West and opalescent. So did Imperial. And like I said, they was cutthroat on copying each other in shapes and treatments and colors.
But they still had little nuances that were different from one to the other.
Right. And you just, that's another one. Here's a good, yeah, can you get a piece of hobnail?
Hobnail, loading, 1 moment, please. Easier to see? Yeah. So this is not Fenton.
No, this is not Fenton. This is Duncan Miller. This was made, this company that was made in the actually, I think this preceded Fenton's hobnail a little bit. This was probably done in the 1930s.
Now, these ones aren't as pronounced.
No, they're not as pronounced, but this is one pattern you definitely have to know your shapes on it whenever you start running the hobnail pieces. But the fun part about this, the only color that they copied that would have been the same as Fenton that was made in the Duncan Miller hobnail was the Vaseline or the Topaz.
Okay. Because
Duncan Miller's blue was a real smoky blue, which looks like a opalescent version of Cambridge Caprice. The pink, which Fenton never did an actual pink hobnail until the 1980s, so it would all be marked.
So then Fenton's itself was when you touch it, it's got almost a point to it on the hobnail.
On most pieces.
Okay.
There is exceptions.
Always. There's always an exception.
Do you have one of the large hob pieces, Andy?
Okay.
One like the compote you found there the other day? Yeah, you don't have roof here.
Yeah, I mean, we have glass everywhere because Barb lives up in Denver, and so there's glass up there, and we rotate it through for different shows and stuff and different events that we have. So we don't always have everything here.
There are a few smaller
at the same time.
But and another thing, show them the top of that cranberry piece. Yeah. Whenever that shape first came out in 1940s, that was a smooth cramp. Didn't have no ruffle at all up there at the top. They discontinued it for a while after the late 40s. They brought it back in 1959. Originally, they called it the 5.5-inch jug. Whenever they brought it back, they called it a syrup pitcher, and they put that crimp on it.
So you can see why people can totally think they're getting a Fenton piece, and it's not Fenton, because the style with the opalescence, the color, the hob is very, very similar from one company to the next.
And very much the same quality too.
Yes. Oh yeah. I mean, Duncan Miller's glasses.
Duncan Miller, their opalescence, I just always have loved.
They're some fires.
If you could find a piece of that in the Topaz or the Vaseline opalescent, it is just to die for. It's actually more of a creamy opalescent than Fenton's Vaseline or Topaz opalescent.
Okay. Let's see what another. Well, Barb gets us something else to look at. Let me see what other questions we have here. Is it true that Fenton's hobnail pieces are, more pointy? Yes.
Yeah, most of the time, but you still got to know your shapes, because there are they did some with a very large hob to copy the old Hobbs Burkina pieces from the late 1800s. They did those in the 50s. There was a comport, a flat candy dish, and a stem candy dish with large hobs, and they're very smooth.
There's a large hob right there in Topaz. Yeah, it's not? No. Okay. So, but I mean, when I first saw this, I thought this was Fenton. But it's because, and it's close enough. It's a nice enough piece of glass that it's got a decent value for itself.
In Duncan Miller, that is an unusual shape to find. You don't find that shape very often, even in the Duncan
What
No.
would something like this be typically priced at an antique
If
shop?
I had it at a good antique show, I have about $75 to $85 on it, just because it's an unusual shape.
Well, I didn't pay that for it. So I gotta get that. And then this piece here, which is a dark cranberry. It's not plum.
Right. This is a dark cranberry. They started adding more gold into the batch to get the darker cranberry color from the early 1960s on.
So what would this be priced at?
It would be about $65 to $70.
So I mean, even though it's not, I mean, Fenton within and of itself has certain values, but all the other glass companies hold, depending on what it is, they hold their
Depending
value.
on what it is.
Yeah.
The thing people don't realize is you'll see at a sale Fenton's advertised, it might be a very common piece.
Oh yeah, the common
that
stuff
they
around here
produce
is mostly
umpteen millions of, or it might be like this piece here, it might be more of an unusual shape, which was only produced for maybe like 3 or 4 years.
What's funny is I've seen a good 5 or 6 of these in Colorado.
Yes, I've been seeing more of them pop up. Used to, I would never see that shell bowl.
So tell us what this is. Do you want to manipulate it so I can see what it is?
This is what they call peach crest. They started doing peach crest in 1942. It was in continuous production until 67, but they made it, they would discontinue different shapes and bring out other shapes. This is what they call the shell bowl, which came out in the 1950s. I always thought it was such a neat shape. I actually got a whimsy basket and peach crest, a 10-inch basket that has this on both ends like that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's one of my favorite shapes in peach crest there, because that makes such a beautiful shaped basket.
And let's talk about the difference between peach crust and peach blow.
Okay, this is peach blow. This actually came out in 1938.
This one?
Yeah. And
the base.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's style.
But this came out in 1938. They started doing it for LG Wright. He got good reaction out of it. They were selling it. Fenton said, "Oh, let's start doing this for ourselves."
And it's basically a case color, correct?
Right. It's a case color. This is actually 3 layers of glass. They started out with ruby overlay, which is ruby glass over crystal, which makes the pink. And then they would put it into the gather again and gather the milk glass over the top.
Okay.
And then they would blow it into the mold. And peach crest is like cranberry. It's always a blown glass, whether it's hand blown or mouth blown.
And then they put the crest.
Then they would put the crest on it. Yes.
To finish the piece on peach crest.
Yeah.
And Fenton named their colors and their crests differently. Like this one, like if this were just on white milk glass, it'd be called silver crest.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But since it's on the peach blow, it's called peach crest.
Yeah, peach crest.
Because of the combination of colors.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where a lot of people get frustrated and don't. They named things so differently as to the order in which they put them together.
Yeah.
So there's still a few things that I'm like, it's this, and they're like, no, Barb and John are like, nope, close, try again.
That's actually an LG Wright shape.
Just the base?
Yeah, they would use that shape for the either a vase, a lampshade, or they had a picture in that shape.
Oh, okay, nice.
Funny story about that exact shape. I found one years and years, probably about 30 years ago in Ohio with that shape, and it had the Fenton sample sticker from the 30s that they was using on it. So that was one of the actual first ones that they made.
We're going to reverse our casing.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's did they call it anything different depending on which way they put the white or the?
Yeah, they did. This is Wild Rose Overlay. And actually, to get this formula, I never have completely understood, but they actually had to tamper with the peach crest formula to get it so it would show up like that on the outside. They tried a lot of different things for years. I found a piece that was actually like rose overlay, which would be pink glass gathered with milk glass, and then it had another clear layer on it or gather over it. Whenever I was doing the rarities book, I took it in to Frank Fenton asked, and he said, yeah, that's one of ours. And he said, we was trying to attempt in the 1940s to do Wild Rose Overlay. And he said, I'll show you something else. And he brought down a piece that was the 8-inch melon vase that was pink glass rose overlay, and instead of it being gathered over crystal, it was gathered over mulberry, which made it actually a 4-layered glass.
Mulberry, beautiful color.
And I fell in love with the piece at first sight. About 7 or 8 years later, whenever they were selling Frank's personal collection, Randy Clark's auction, it was pictured on there. I wasn't going to be able to stay for that auction. Told a friend of mine that was staying, I said, buy it. I want it. It's mine. I did get it.
There are certain things that we just put,
I did,
put down and say, we're going to take
I did get it. And it was so funny because we was heading back from West Virginia at the time the auction was going on, and he called me as I was driving through Indianapolis. He says, it's up for sale. It's up to 150. I buy it. It's up to 175. Buy it. It's up to 200. Buy it. I got it for 200.
What part of buy it did you not understand first?
So this is an overlay also.
This is pink overlay that they did for LG Wright. Fenton never did actually do a pink
And you
overlay.
can see the difference in the color.
But what I was going to tell you on the Wild Rose, they kept on experimenting with it from the 1940s up to the early 60s till they finally got the formula that they wanted.
Okay. And so they just keep experimenting basically till they come up with, they have something in mind, and they keep
With
just
Burmese,
changing
they worked from the
formula.
mid-50s up into the early 70s to get the Burmese formula
And
right.
they came out with the blue Burmese, wasn't that an
Later on,
accident
that came out in the 80s.
Okay.
And then the green Burmese didn't come out until 2000.
Okay.
When they brought out the Rubina Verde, which is the cranberry shading down to green, or the green shading up to cranberry, or whichever you want to call it, that came out.
Barb's like,
Yeah, right. But that color came out in 99. I've got a piece, a hobnail piece that was done in 42, where they first started experimenting with that color, and it took them that long to finally perfect it.
Okay.
This is Gold Crest.
Can you hand me the snow crust piece too?
Yeah.
We'll put those up at the same time so we can show some different crest colors. This one, and how about the silver crest too? Okay, well, we'll do these crests. Okay. So they apply this on to the glass.
Fenton was the only U.S. Company that was able to do Crest. They ever perfected the Crest treatment.
And silver crest is probably one of the most common.
Probably one of the most common colors in the Crest. It's milk glass with a crystal called silver crest. Originally, they came out. Can you hold that piece over so they can see it? Look, they came out in 41 with silver crest, and it originally had an extra white crest on the top of the crystal. On the top of the crystal, and they called it crystal crest at that time, but it was too prohibitive to make it like that. So they took after 6 months, they took the extra white crest off and just did it as silver.
So you can see that extra, that's a crystal crest. So it's like a double crest of glass on the edge of the piece when they finished it. Okay, and then they did other colors.
Snow crest, the gold crest, like the fan base, they started doing colored crest in about 42. They did gold crest, rose crest, and aqua crest. They started doing the snow crest with the milk glass crest in 48.
Now, some of the crests are called different colors based on what colored glass they're applied to.
Right.
Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Like emerald crest.
Emerald crest would be milk glass with a green or emerald crest to it. Now the snow crest would always be what color the body of the glass. So that is a ruby snow crest.
Okay, there we go.
That is ruby snow crest. If you find it in the emerald green, it's emerald snow crest. Okay. There is a light blue snow crest, which is just drop dead gorgeous, and there is an amber snow crest.
And then
this was Blue Ridge. This was actually first kind of a double deal. This was whenever they first started doing opalescent glass, and also in 38 whenever they first started doing Crest.
The camera's backwards. It's so hard to find the middle.
But whenever they first started doing Crest.
Okay. So, no, I mean, this is on an older opalescent. So they carried Crest throughout.
They carried Crest right up to. They finally stopped doing a lot of Crest around in 2000 because all the younger glass makers, they just couldn't figure it out and couldn't make it.
Here's another one.
And they finally, before they closed, in the last 6-7 years before they closed, they had about stopped making Crest.
This is a pink crest.
Probably Dusty Rose.
Dusty Rose.
Probably
And that's
Dusty
on the
Rose.
French Opalescent.
On French Opalescent, that's the daffodil shape.
So that's a much later piece than a lot.
This is about an 80s, 90s piece.
That was
right?
probably in the 2000.
Oh, okay. Even newer than I thought.
Yeah. I would say that was probably one that was done for QVC.
Oh, yes. Hi, all in the attic treasures. How are you doing tonight? Let's see. So we switch up the crest and we'll show you with the
One thing I did want to add in a little bit of education on the Cranberry coin dot as opposed to the dot optic and everything. Whenever Fenton would do the optic pattern, the dot optic pattern, when it was done like that, without any opalescence in it, is always referred to as ruby overlay. So this would, without the crest, this would be referred to as ruby overlay dot optic. Whenever they added in the opalescence to the dots, like it would be the white dots, it would be cranberry dot optic. And then whenever they did the reverse, which would be the cranberry dots with the white body, it would become coin dot. Yeah, there's your French opalescent dot optic.
Dot optic.
And everybody always tries to call that coin spot. And
So
even in
turn it
Victorian,
around the other way. So if this was opalescent with clear dots,
it would be cranberry coin dot.
bigger.
I mean, French opalescent coin dot. I'm
Coin
sorry.
dot.
French opalescent coin dot.
So I mean, I know we don't have a whole bunch of people live watching us. I know lots of people be watching that. There we go. There's a good example. Of it.
There's your French opalescent coin
This
dot.
is why, because of the language and the way that they have done their glass in so many different variations, and the way that Fenton has titled their glass, that's why it's so hard for new people to really get a hold of
even in the Victorian time period, they always say, well, they called it cranberry coin spot back in the Victorian. I got to looking through Heacock's Cranberry book and all of them. They never referred to it as coin spot. That is a terminology that somebody has come up with
kind
the
of
cell.
glass slang.
Yeah, glass slang.
That's come about in recent years that
And
people are trying to describe it. Okay, can you grab the mulberry piece there, and I'll put that one up. And this is one of the color overlays we were talking about, right?
This is Mulberry Overlay. They started in 1942. It is ruby overlay with cased or gathered with a blue, real pretty light blue. You can really see, if you can show them the bottom, you can really see the blue. Set it back more or less straight up and down. It shows up. Yeah, you can really see the blue down at the bottom on the Marie. Yeah. One other thing.
Now you're saying the Marie. That's this part
That's
right
it.
here.
Yes. And
so each
what people don't realize on the Marie, whenever Fenton makes their glass, this is what they're holding on to.
Oh, yeah.
And everything on a lot of times. And actually the blowpipe would be stuck in at this end and they would be blowing it and then they would crimp it.
Yes. So they're taking it off like with a tool this way.
Yeah.
And grabbing the glass.
Right. And then they can handle it a little bit better.
Set it down and put it into what they want to crimp.
Right. Yes.
So there's also.
That's one reason why you never see, for most pieces of Fenton, you never see a tunnel mark because it's always blown from the top.
Yes. Okay. So then we have the Fenton's verbiage and how they name their colors and name their shapes. And we also have the verbiage in terms of all the different parts of the glass and how it's described. And you have all the verbs and descriptions of the pieces that are used to then create the glass, as in the pontil and the mold and all those things as well. So there's no surprise that people have a hard time really starting to grasp all the Fenton terminology.
It's complicated, but it's fun.
It is.
It's like I was explaining the difference between dot optic and coin spot and coin dot. The friend of mine that helped me write the book, since she was a very advanced Cranberry coin dot collector, she says, all I know, it has dots on it.
Right. Now this is
Royal Purple, which is a tweak up of the mulberry, I
Mhm.
think they actually added in. I never have understood the difference myself, but it was came out darker, and they actually added in more cranberry. They probably put it like on it with a purple base, gathered it with a type of a
Because it
purple
looks
glass.
more purple on top,
Yeah.
and it looks more blue down
Right.
here. So obviously it's the cobalt. Is it a ruby over cobalt?
It could have been, yeah.
Okay.
I never have really ever had a chance to talk to him. I'm kind of like a friend of mine that was an expert on Victorian glass, and he was also an expert on Fenton. But he says as it got newer, I knew less about it because I did the earlier stuff, and I'm
Yes.
somewhat that way on some of the '90s treatments, and especially some of the 2000 glass.
Yeah. So then in collectors, if they collect Fenton or they collect other glass, then the terminology isn't exactly the same
Right.
between manufacturers then as well.
Right.
Only certain like basic things like pontil and mold and some of those things.
Right.
But Fenton would call things different things. Well, everybody has hobs.
Right.
And that's pretty much the same. But yeah.
Yeah, most companies that you run into, that especially that they did handmade glass, Imperial, Westmoreland, Miller, Northwood, they had some sort of a hobnail was a very popular pattern. They had some sort of a hobnail pattern.
Yes.
That
And then
their
there's English hobnail, which is kind of a diamond
shape that was also done by Westmoreland.
Okay. Somebody is asking, they have pieces with no marks on it, and they're wondering if they're reproductions. Is there a way to tell? And if so, who made copies?
Best, like I said earlier, the best way to tell is by reference books and go by shapes and study your shapes. A basic shape. I'm trying to see something. Do you have just like a basic 4.5-inch vase or 5-inch vase?
Yeah.
Even that hobnail that.
So the early years, because Fenton didn't put marks on their glass, you just have to study and know what their shapes that they
Know the
created.
shape. Know the shapes. Know the type of ruffle.
Alex asked Jeff. He'll could get you something to drink. Honey.
Know the type. Know the type of ruffles that Fenton was known for. Yeah.
Now I know, like
this is a 4.5-inch vase.
Okay, here. Or you want to hold it up? Hold it up in front of
Yeah.
you. Like
Okay. Yeah. I didn't know. This is a 4.5-inch vase. This shape in the 40s, or like that shape there in the 40s, was called a 203 mold. They could take this, change the crimp, and the ruffle, add a handle onto it, make it a basket, or add a handle onto the side and make it into a small pitcher. And everything.
Crimp it in more.
Make it into the Rose Bowl. Yeah, make it widen it out. This is another one. This is the way they made the basket. This was actually on the same shape as that, as the other cameo vase, colored vase I showed.
And then the handle's been applied.
Yeah, and then the handle is applied later on.
So you can basically see we put these side by side, but they're the same form, and it's just been manipulated to turn out to be a little bit different as an end form.
There's also the series of top hat shapes. We call them top hat shapes because they would shape them, the crimp, and bring it down into a saddle crimp where it would actually look like a top hat.
Yeah.
And there was five different sizes of those. Yeah, here's the top hat.
Go for it.
That is probably about a 1921 size. The
This is big. This is almost 8 inches tall.
There is one other size that is one bigger than that, which is, oh God, rare. It's not even funny. The 1923 and 22. Let's see, 22 and 23 is some smaller than 1924, which is the size that you see most of the time.
You can see there's no pontil on it.
Which is the size you see most of the time, is the just real small. It's only about. Yeah. Okay, this is a good example. That is the 1924, the 1924 mold.
So these are the same shape.
Yeah, essentially.
Gradation size.
Yeah.
And And then as one
Do
of
you
the
have one of the
ways
little top hats
they
around there handy?
manipulated it. I thought we had a green.
I thought I saw a green one there too.
So
Okay.
it's just been manipulated differently. You don't have a ruffle,
Now,
and then
the
this one-
top hat and the creamer was made off the exact same mold.
Yeah, and I mean, it's amazing how much it looks different. And then if you put them bottom to bottom, you can see they're this
Exact
size.
match.
And they've just been finished differently.
And then they would also even on that size of the little top hat, they would do that double crimp like on the big vase.
This quad crimp.
Yeah, quad crimp.
And I mean, quad crimp, tri crimp. I mean, it's
Double crimp.
how many whoop-de-doos they have on the side.
Well,
They find the right
this is a
one.
quad crimp with this 4. You could
This
have
has
the
got
3.
4 sides turned up.
You could have the 3, or you could have the 2.
So this is basically a 2.
And then the smaller crimp is basically just what they call a crimp. And you can also find that with what I call the pie crust crimp, which
That's a really tight crimp.
tight crimp was just almost straight up and down and at a little bit at a flare at the top.
Then there's like this crimp is pretty wide and open.
Yeah, but they started doing that type of crimp more in the 70s. I always called that the loopy crimp, where it's not as tight as the items that they had done previously.
This is more of a pie crust type.
Oh yeah, that one's just we'll bring it way up close.
And that's a very desirable shape.
See how much tighter that.
That's what they call a heart relish.
It reminds me much more of like ribbon candy.
Yeah,
how
ribbon
tight it is.
Actually, that is more of a ribbon candy crimp than a pie crust crimp.
Now they call this a heart relish or a
They call
nappy
that a heart relish, yeah.
because it's got the point. Oop, wrong way. There we go. The point there. This one actually has a pretty good heart shape to it. Some of these don't have as big of a heart. They're not pushed in as much. So that one's a milk glass.
That's the milk glass
hobnail.
hobnail, and they started that in production and that shape in about 59, and that was in the line till on into and hobnail and milk glass till on into the 80s whenever they stopped full-time milk glass production.
Okay, so here's a question. So is the ruffle not a good way to talk about the rim? The crimp is the correct term.
Crimp is correct term.
Yes.
But it pretty well, unless you run into a piece like the creamer that's shown up there, it's always ruffled.
Okay.
It's always ruffled because they had to put a ruffle on it to be able to finish it off from where they broke it off whenever they was making it.
Oh, yeah, so the pipe itself.
This might be a better example of pie crust crimp.
Yeah, that's more of a pie crust
You can
crimp.
see this one a little bit better just because of the
That's more of a
the
pie
difference
crust
in
crimp.
the color of glass. So this is Jamestown Overlay, right?
Yeah, it was a teal overlay. It was a very popular color in the 50s.
Speaking of which, this one needs to be shipped out.
It was very popular color in the 50s, but was only made for about 3 years.
Yes. Hi, Erin. How are you doing tonight? Glad you could join us. All right. So okay, everybody's saying hello and all that stuff. So, and if anybody else has any other questions, we'd be more than willing to bring those up too.
I think Fenton made for other companies.
Sure, let's go with that. Fenton made glass for lots of people, right?
They did anything for QVC, for Lennox, LG Wright. This was an item that was made for LG Wright in the 1980s.
And it is a covered dish.
Yeah.
Let me not drop it first of all. Ah!
That is a covered frog.
Yeah, so here's
He's
how
a-
it goes.
I always said he was the ugly frog because there's some other covered frogs that's kind of unique and kind of neat. And I
he's
always said that was the ugly frog.
right? And then he's a cobalt slag glass.
That is a cobalt slag. Whenever I was doing the book on the special orders or the items that Fenton did for other companies, because it was always a deep, dark secret as to what was actually LG Wright actually had made by what company. And I asked Frank Fenton, I said, would you just honestly tell me what you know that you did exclusively for them? He said, anything opalescent, overlay, or opaque, which was milk glass, and like the slag and everything. But whenever he said opaque or milk glass, he meant the heavier milk glass like this and not the lighter milk glass like was done for the LG Wright lamps. They was all done by Davis Lynch.
Okay, and this is made for LG, right?
This was
also?
made by for LG Wright also.
And this is made from the Atterbury duck mold.
Right.
So
From the-
that's is that a Victorian era?
That is a Victorian. LG Wright was a company that came into being in the mid 1930s.
Mhm.
They never had furnaces, but he had found gobs of mold from closed up glass factories. Then he would go to different glass companies and get the best price that they could make
Mhm.
for him on an item, and he would have them to make it, and then he would market it.
So
Now-
LG Wright would go to have glass made from lots of different companies.
Yeah. Mhm.
Not just Fenton.
He had glass made by Fenton, Imperial, Westmoreland, Hayden City, Martinsville. Now that one, I will not say that it's for sure that it was made by Fenton. But if Fenton had that color in the line and he needed it made at that time, yeah, Astoria made glass for Wright. If they had that color in the line, Fenton did, and he needed it, and they could give him a good price, he would go there. But if New Martinsville had the color in the line at the same time, and they could give him a cheaper price, he would take, because that is a press mold.
Yes. So
And any blown items that Wright had made was done exclusively by Fenton.
Like that maze picture we have.
okay. So then basically you're going down another rabbit trail here with to figure out who LG Wright and some of the other companies had things poured
Right.
by. You need to know the years that the colors were poured by the different companies
Right. You
to
need,
track down
yeah, mhm.
which company they had things produced
Yeah.
from.
Because New Martinsville, later on, it was Viking glass. They had Vaseline made, just plain Vaseline, not Vaseline opalescent. Wright had a lot of plain Vaseline.
Are you talking
made.
Vaseline or you're talking Topaz?
Topaz.
Topaz.
Yeah, that's another thing. Fenton called it Topaz Opalescent. Most other companies called it Vaseline.
Yes, yes. And I think that's the most common
And Wright
term for
referred
most
to
glass people.
most
They
of the
call
time as to their opalescent and their topaz,
it- we have some Topaz.
plain topaz, as Vaseline.
Right, but we do have some.
Just to show the color. So that, okay, we'll just switch out here for a second. So yeah, I know, Yvonne, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't mind looking around my my glass showroom around here these days.
Yvonne, we were looking at your booth.
Glass can get complicated, but it can also be a lot of fun if you really want to pursue it and go in after it. That is the Topaz Opalescent
Oh, here's one.
that Fenton made in the 1940s. It was done from 1940 to 1941. And do you know the reason why it was discontinued in 41?
The uranium.
Uranium content that was in it, and the U.S. needed it for the war effort. And then Fenton wasn't able to produce it again until 1959.
But the cool side effect of that is this stuff glows like
Yes,
crazy
uh-huh.
under the black lights. Here, let's get it on here. See if we can see it. There we go. Now this is a total another rabbit hole. The chemicals that cause different color glass to glow under black light.
Right.
So we know that the yellow had the uranium in
Yeah.
it.
A lot of green had uranium in it.
Okay.
A lot of your green glass. Well, I don't think that piece, the bell butter dish, does it glow? No, it don't glow. But there will be some green that will glow.
Okay. But then
Your
you look at
custard
it.
will glow.
Yes. But like this is uranium,
Right.
but green is uranium also.
Is
But
some of it is
this-
uranium also.
They call this Vaseline, but you don't call the green
No.
Vaseline.
A lot of them was calling it uranium glass. It was just always called back at that time green or like green depression glass.
Okay. And then that amberina there on that fairy light. Does that have the cadmium in it? Is that the color that glows?
I almost
in the
need a
amberina?
short to be able to tell you what
We're
colors.
gonna have to do a whole nother program on.
Yeah, whenever I have a chemical list in front of me,
Okay. Okay.
because blue, like the regular blue opalescent hobnail, they use copper to get that blue in it.
Okay. Yeah.
Cranberry would be they use gold to get that color
Yes.
and the
I know,
ruby.
right, guys? It's super complicated. That's why it's so great to have somebody like John and Barb that have such a long-term knowledge and long-term working within the companies and the colors and have a little bit deeper
And
breadth of the knowledge.
What is so much fun, and it gets more complicated, each glass company the formulas was different from other glass companies.
Yes.
Frank Fenton told me to get the gold and the gold crest, they had to use, I don't know how they ever mastered up and did it, but they had to use a certain brand of oats called Mother Oats. He said if they used other brand of oats, it would come out too dark or too light.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and Katie, definitely the books are the way to go to gain knowledge, because a lot of this, if it wasn't recorded in the books, it's just gone, right?
Well, that's one reason why I ended up doing the books at the time that I did them. There were so many of the glass workers from the 40s and 50s that were still alive. Some of them were still working at Fenton. So many of the old collectors, so many of the older dealers were still alive. And you got all of these. Some of it was old wives' tales, which wasn't exactly true, but then you could kind of ferret it down and figure it out whether it was actually so or not.
Yeah. Now there's people like Dave Fetty, who we still can get knowledge from how they actually worked in the factory.
Yeah, but keep in mind, Dave Fetty is 85 years old. He don't look it or don't act
right?
it that he's 85 years old.
But he has at least a working
knowledge. He has very much of a working knowledge, because he was plant foreman there from the late 70s all the way up till he retired about 2000.
Yeah. And he still blows glass like on
he
the
still
side.
blows glass, yes, very much so.
Mm-hmm. So, yes, and there's proprietary secrets, because they would try and copy each other.
Oh, I'll tell you a good one on that. Frank was graciously, whenever I did my very first book, the big book of Fenton, I said, I want to put a chemical list so people could get idea of what was added in to make what colors at that during the 1940 to 1970 time period. And he supplied me with a pretty substantial list of what items made, what chemicals made what colors. Okay. Whenever I started the 1970 to 85 book, of course, chocolate glass was in there in that time period. That was always a deep, dark secret there, because it was developed by a cousin that worked for Fenton. That was the chief chemist, Jacob Rosenthal. And it was a deep, dark secret as to what components went into that. Nobody could ever even get an inkling of it. And a lot of companies had tried to copy it and never could get it like Fenton got it. And so I wasn't thinking at the time I sent off the list of colors I would need for the 70 to 85 book. I had chocolate glass wrote down there. I got the letter back and he had everything wrote down. And by chocolate glass, he had wrote down, ha ha. And I called.
Yeah.
I called him up and I said, ha ha ha. He said, a lot of people have tried to get that formula out of me and never could. And I was sitting there writing all that down. I got the chocolate and I almost started writing it out. We had a lot of laughs off that.
Like that commercial.
But like I said, I never will forget that letter. I've got that saved back, but he just had wrote ha ha.
So here's what we're talking about.
This is chocolate glass.
Now, it's not slag glass like the cobalt and the.
It's kind of considered more or less a slag there, but it's a heat-sensitive glass is what it is.
So depending on the temperature of the glass, when it cools.
Yeah, when it cools, it'll be how light or how dark it gets.
The range of color that you get. Okay, so that's the chocolate, which obviously looks like chocolate. And this is the mandarin, which is, it goes from almost the clear red to the.
Yeah, it was what they called one of the jade colors.
And you can see some of there we go. You can see some of the striations in that glass.
And whenever they refer to jade colors, it's just not like jade, like the green. This is the Oriental term. Whenever you get to a piece of opaque glass that was made in the Orient from the 1800s even, if it was opaque like that, they referred to it as a jade. So the periwinkle, like the cobalt blue, the jade green, the red, the yellow, Chinese yellow, they was all referred to. That's periwinkle.
So that's the new production.
Yeah. But they was all referred to as jade colors.
And you can kind of see some of the stripes in the glass as to how that cooled into different shades.
It's almost like what I would call a molted glass. It's not exactly a slag, but it was kind of melted in where it would change colors.
Mm-hmm. It's only one glass formula, but depending on how it's repeated,
yeah,
gives you the swirl effect.
And like when they first issued out the Mandarin red, they called it Venetian red. That's more of Venetian red. It doesn't show the great marbleizing effect,
Yeah.
and that's how they wanted it. When they first issued it in the 20s, they wanted it to be very even, and then as they went into the
Well, Fenton had so much because they wanted every piece to be consistent
Yeah.
with
but
the
then
other
when they
piece.
changed it to Mandarin,
But they
they wanted the
couldn't get,
marbling.
they couldn't get it that way. A lot
And
of
you can
times.
have a piece of mandarin next to another piece of mandarin, and they can totally look different.
I saw some of them looked almost like
Welcome to my world, Yvonne.
a weak ruby slag
Yeah.
in the Mandarin.
I mean, you can, then it goes all the way from a dark burgundy, very
almost
opaque,
burnt.
yes, to down to this really cherry red color
Yeah.
that's translucent.
Yeah.
And
And,
then they
you
had,
just never know what it's going to turn out like.
and then they had orange they called flame, but nobody knows if that was on purpose or if that was a really weak batch of Mandarin.
Yeah, so you have basically in the color sensitive glasses is the red is the mandarin, the chocolate is the brown, the periwinkle is the blue, and there's a green. What's
Mongolian.
the Mongolian green?
Yeah.
And then there's Chinese yellow. Are those the basic ones of those?
Those are pretty well the basic. Yeah.
Okay.
There is a lighter blue. She's got a piece of
Yeah,
over
see
here.
those?
This is Persian blue.
Now, are these more of the opaque colors?
There's more opaque out there. All of them is all opaque, considered to be opaque.
Ah,
More of a translucent.
we're gonna split hairs now.
Just the 20s and 30s stuff.
Oh, Yvonne says she wants an alley cat in that color. Well, good luck. That's
They're
this
kind of
is,
tough to find.
they're expensive. The alley cats, they're what?
I can't remember well because I've been selling my mother's collection. She passed several years ago, and she had a lot of alley cats. I can't remember whether my alley cat and periwinkle is still on Etsy or not.
And basically, any alley cat under say what 100, 150 bucks is a good deal anymore.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. There's a lot of glasses.
Yeah.
They're heavy.
Depending on the color of glass, 125 to 200. Then if you get into the decorated or the real special colors,
Mhm.
they're going to run up a whole lot more.
And if a decorator got their hands on it and painted it a one of a kind piece, and
They're
whoever
going
the
to be going up
decorator
$300,
is-
$400, $500
Yeah.
a lot of times.
And then you might get somebody like me that didn't like it.
You
And if
just-
it gets on if it gets on auction and you get a nutcase like Barb is and she really wants it,
wash
you just
off
will forget about it.
Have you really done that? Oh, you would. Okay. So these are opaques
Right.
where they're not that the real like this is
Translucent,
translucent.
but transparent, I call it a lot.
My mom's gonna yell at me because all these science terms. And then these you can see
Translucent.
through it,
So you can
but
see my hand through that one.
you can't really see details through. So in these came in pinks, blues, greens,
Yeah.
yellows.
There's a very rare color in the jade colors that's called lilac, which is a real pretty light lavender. That's milk glass there. There is also a more of a gray tone on that same order as the milk glass. It's called moonstone, which is very pretty.
Hey, can you push the number 3 button on the fan while you're over there?
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah, just the last button on the right. Is it? Oh, it's not
Not
plugged
plugged
in.
in.
Oh,
I'm like,
man.
I can push the
You
button.
can
all
tell
you
it's
want.
getting a little warm. My cheeks are red. Jeff tried to plug it in earlier for us, but yeah.
I probably took over the cord. And
No, we unplugged a whole bunch of stuff when we were trying to get everything else done. So
Okay, now it's shut.
there we go. Give us a little bit of air
Got
moving.
air.
Katie says she has this the Fenton Jadeite bowl.
That's pretty. That is one shape, kind of one shape. Whenever you talk about Fenton, no matter what time period, that's called the petal bowl. And with it being in jadeite, that's just kind of a piece that everybody knows.
Do they
That's
call it the
Fenton.
Lotus Bowl too?
They call it the Lotus Bowl too.
And so they've done it.
And
where
this
they've
is a
turned it
Lotus
in,
Bowl where they cupped it in.
and then they've turned it out, and then they make it in any
And they shake it
variation
all about?
in between, right?
Right. Yes.
Now these ones are common where they come on a stand
Yeah, they would come on a black stand or a different colored
and have a
stand,
frog.
have a frog, and then they would have the September morn nymph.
Yes,
Frog.
the nymph. There we go. That's a dangerous frog. Be careful with that frog.
Yes, it took out a $200 connoisseur collection.
And then they'd make it into a console set, which means you have the bowl and whatever centerpiece with candlesticks,
Right.
correct?
Matching
And then
candlesticks.
no,
I think all the candlesticks was flared out. I don't ever remember. Do you ever remember seeing the cup stand candlesticks?
I've never seen
I never have ever
I've
seen a
seen
cup
most
in
of them out
candlestick.
like
Yeah,
this.
they was always flared out like that.
There you go.
So these are the type of candlesticks that would go with it.
And it's hard to see because of the dark color, the ruby glass, but those are the candlesticks that match, quote unquote, the Lotus Bowl or the Flare Bowl. What did you call it first?
Petal bowl.
Petal Bowl.
Petal bowl.
It's got petals of a flower, which may or may not be a lotus flower.
I know. I got a new.
This confuses a lot of people because a lot of the old timer collectors and dealers terminology was not the same as the factory terminology.
And then we have
Yes,
surveys
yes.
and surveys.
Oh,
And I learned from a lot of the old timers years before I ever got associated with the factory, had any contact with the factory.
so what era was the jadeite color
1920s, late
petal bowl?
1920s, late 1920s to real early 1930s.
Did they reproduce that later with the jadeite color?
No,
That was the only time.
whenever
they made
you
that
see
color.
that piece, that was the only time that in the petal bowl or the Lotus Bowl, that was the only time that they made it.
Now they made it later on in other colors.
They made jade and other colors there.
They made the.
I mean, they made jade in other shapes.
Yes. Did they make the petal bowl in other colors?
Not too much
more
later on.
recently?
In the 30s, not in recently, in the 30s, they did it in cobalt and ruby.
Yeah.
That was about the last time that it ever
You
appeared.
see ruby a lot.
Yeah, that was.
The 90th anniversary, isn't the Celeste Morn mint one of those?
What's that?
Isn't the Celeste Morn 95th anniversary mint in one of those bowls?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm trying to envision that catalog flyer, and I just can't remember it off the top of my head.
I was looking for my phone.
But your phone's right here.
Exactly. I was like, I can look this up real
Like,
quick.
it's like when you're on it.
Yeah.
Sorry, we needed two
Exactly.
devices so we could see all the pretties and everything. So, Picasso Cat, is all the glass shown Fenton? Currently, it is Fenton.
Yes.
You'll have to go back and see. We've shown some Fenton for other companies like LG Wright, and then the majority of everything else we've shown so far is Fenton. I mean, because John's our resident expert. I mean, Barb knows way more than I do still too, but I know enough that, oh, this looks good, I'll take it home. Like this one. Here, just tell about this one for a second. This is one I was like, this isn't an auction. Should I bid on this?
Yeah, that was done in the 1930s, late 1930s, that the Bayesian button pattern, very unusual pattern to find that, the Topaz Opalescent, and very massive piece there. And it's just kind of, sometimes whenever you look at something like
I
that,
thought it was something about this big.
Yeah. any dummy should know this is something special. This should be going over about $200 to $250 or more.
Okay, well, I mean, I paid more than I normally would, like my normal gambling costs, but I still will make money on this. So that was worth the pickup on that one.
And we had one of those square, not too long.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna play the Is It Fenton game.
Okay, is it Fenton?
We'll put 3 vases up here.
So this is a melt glass white base that's painted with pears. This is kind of a blue with rib optics.
Turquoise blue with a rib optic.
Mhm. And this is like an overlay, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Like the blue overlay over white. Does anybody have a guess which piece is Fenton of these 3 vases up here? She wants to know. She has a daisy. She has some daisy. Oh, she likes the daisy button.
Well, I do too. I have a lot of the blue daisy button at home.
Yeah, and that color, that Topaz Opalescent, is a very popular color, especially right now because of the glowing factor with the black lights as well.
Whenever I'm talking about my collection, I'm trying to remember a piece in it. Keep in mind, I have over 3,000 pieces in my own collection.
Yes,
Besides the selling.
we know. We're looking for our inheritance in your house.
Right.
So somebody is guessing the third one, the blue overlay. The third one is all. Somebody's guessing all. Base number 3. So which one is Fenton, John?
It's the one on the end, the blue overlay.
This one here is the Fenton one. Now,
I don't know who made the middle one off the top of my head.
This is an art
That's made
glass.
by a New Jersey company. I can't
Okay,
think of
I
the
was gonna
number.
say it's either a smaller company like Rainbow or it was something European.
Can you see the
Possibly.
pontil there? And it's a rough pontil. So it's Blinkos were a little bit smoother than that. So we know it's not Blinko. So some of the things you just have to go by.
And the milk glass
elimination.
decorated what was done by Massa early 2000s.
And here's the dead giveaway on this one. It's not marked, but it has the original Mosser gift shop sticker on the bottom of it.
And a lot of people will confuse that shape because of the ruffle and everything
Mhm.
with Massa. Now
With
a lot of
Fenton.
yeah, with Fenton.
Yeah. I mean, if you were to look at that quick, I would pick it up because it looks similar to Fenton.
Right.
It's a nice, solid, old piece of beautiful firing milk glass. But
And keep in mind now that Molted Glass owns all the Fenton hobnail and thumbprints molds.
so okay, so here.
But they don't have the crimping machine. I guess the machine that they had in use at that time that they made like that
Yeah.
has went out, been decommissioned or whatever. They don't have the crimping machine to add the crimp on, so it will be a smooth crimp or
They don't have any way to make any crimps
No,
on bases currently?
not right now.
Oh, well,
But it is
interesting.
clearly marked Molted Glass with the Ohio with the M in the center of it.
Everything
shape of
producing
Ohio.
currently.
Yeah, but if that was put down and the contract whenever Fenton sold it to them, it would be clearly marked as Molted
So when
Glass.
Fenton closed down or stopped producing glass and auctioned everything off.
Yeah, Mossa bought all the thumbprints and all the hobnail molds.
And then there are other companies such as Chinese companies who bought.
To my knowledge, right now, nobody from China ever got any of Fenton molds.
Okay.
This was one thing that we was really emphatic on keeping from
Yeah.
happening.
Okay. I thought they.
No, they did not ever get anything.
Okay. Now some of the clubs like NFGS bought some.
FAGCA,
FAGCA.
the molds that Fenton had that belonged to Imperial, Astoria, Westmoreland, a lot of those molds went right back to those clubs.
Okay. All right. Because they owned them for purposes for
Yeah,
fundraising and such.
yeah,
for their
uh-huh.
club.
And there's some other individuals that bought different ones. But like I said, it was almost of a deal. If you was importing glass from China, you wasn't going to be allowed to buy Fenton molds, and there was not going to be any. A lot of and it was kind of a deep dark secret, as especially the older molds from the 40s, 50s, and 40s and on back, as to what was still usable and what wasn't usable. There, I think a lot of them had already been destroyed, especially the pre-war, Second World War molds. I think a lot of them had went to the scrap drive,
the metal scrap.
and then a lot of the ones from the later 40s and 50s just wasn't usable. They had been worn out, and it was a surprise whenever they started coming out of the woodwork what could be found and what wasn't found.
Now Fenton still owns some molds.
Fenton still owns a lot of molds.
And they are having Mosser
and
and
Blanco is probably about the only two compatible glass companies that can make molds.
that are pouring glass for them in their molds.
Gathering glass.
Gathering glass to be produced in their molds.
Yeah.
Okay, she's put us some big pieces. Are we playing?
Which one is Fenton game again?
Which one is Fenton? Now, I know this is the big, let's see. People are way into the mid-mod swung stuff. I'm going
That's
to
a
show
beautiful
you
shape.
the top of this one and bring it all the way up. So it's kind of got that thumbprint kind of look to it with a circular base. This one has the canes.
Mulberry cane.
Yep, inside, and it's a kind of a swung top of the base as well. And then this one is a short one, but it's got a lot of fingers to the swung part as well. So any guesses on to these three green vases as to which one, which of any of these is Fenton? Are any of them Fenton? Are they?
I know.
You don't get to guess.
Dang.
Don't give it away. I'm gonna have another drink. All of a sudden, I realize how hot I am.
Oh, shoot.
Pour me up in here with all this hot air.
Did it? Oh, you hear that?
What's that?
She said it was warming up in here with all this hot air.
Yeah.
Okay, any guesses? Picasso Cat says none. Yvonne, Katie, is Aaron still here? Do you all have a guess as to if any of these or all of these are Fenton? And if so, which one? Or plural? We have one guess of Picasso Cat. We must have a little bit of a lag, which is not a big surprise. So let's see. Oh, wait, I have some more on there. Bree says there's 3. Yvonne says number 1. Vintage and Vinyl Katie, she votes for number 1. All right, you're going to give him the answer, Miss Barb?
All 3.
Oh, yep. All 3 of these vases are Fenton. Now,
That's the thumbprint, done in the
Oh, yeah.
1960s in
Try not to take out
colonial
the lamp.
green,
now you can't see, there's no mark on this because it's pre-marked.
pre-logo.
Pre-logo, that's the word I want. And that's a colonial green, and that's a giveaway because of the time period in which they made this color.
Right.
And
that
this,
color and that
and this,
thumbprint pattern.
and this pattern. Now this
This one, I
green,
can't think of the pattern name off the top of my head. Do you know?
but it's got the little
Yeah, no, that's,
Fenton.
yeah, it does have the Fenton
There's
logo.
the
I have
Fenton
actually
logo.
never seen that shape. Because actually that one is more like whenever it's just normal mold, it's more like a toothpick.
Here's the other one, yeah.
This one
Now,
was
this
done
one-
by Angelo Rossi whenever he worked at Fenton in the early 2000s. He was a Canadian glass artist, and he was there for several years.
This one would be harder to guess though because it does have a polished pontil.
And that's why the-
But it is a freehand piece.
Yeah,
It was done without a mold.
Freehand without a mold. So this is more of one that you really need to know who was making
Yeah.
what when to know
Right.
that that was made by
Because
Fenton.
Angelo Rossi made glass at Fenton. Dave Ralston made glass. I'm trying to think of the other glass artist that was there in the 80s besides
I've seen Frank Worker, Robert Barber.
Robert Berber. There was another one in the 80s. And Frank Workman was there with Dave Fetty on in the 2000s.
I knew who else you're talking about.
And I can't think of his name for the life of me right now.
Yep, Aaron, a lot of the times all the stuff that I see, you guys looking at Aaron and his wife Alex, they're out of Florida and they look for and the swung vases a lot. So a lot of times they're looking at what they have as Viking or LG Wright or Ellie Smith. Ellie Smith. I always mix them up, I'm sorry. And Fenton. So and Blinko kind of goes into
Right.
that as well. So you really have to know who made what when and what color they made when to identify some of the ones that aren't marked.
Actually know your molds.
Yep.
Now, like that Rossi vase,
Mm-hmm.
keep an eye, especially if you're on the East Coast all the way down to Florida. A lot of that stuff was marketed down there, or people would come through the Fenton gift shop. Yeah, this one. Would come through the Fenton gift shop from that area and would buy pieces of it.
Okay, because it's a retirement community.
Yeah,
And
mhm.
people go on vacation and bring home a souvenir.
Yeah, right.
Okay, Aaron, I expect you to find one of these.
That's a
And
beautiful. I
bring it
saw
out,
some
show
really
it
neat
to us.
stuff whenever, because I was over there a lot whenever he was there, because I was working on my books doing research, and I saw some really neat stuff at the gift shop. Saw him make some really neat stuff. But that's probably the most striking piece of
It's pretty neat.
Rossi I have ever saw.
Do we have another example of something that you wouldn't think would be Fenton? By
Well, I
chance?
have something up real quick that is another one of this line on the right. And were the other colors they were doing at the time. And just another note, this color is heritage green versus the colonial green. So they're pretty similar, but you can really
You
see a
can really
difference
tell a
together.
difference between
The heritage is a much grayer green.
And Heritage Green, Colonial Green was discontinued in the 70s. There was kind of a lapse in between before Heritage Green came out, and it came out more in the 80s.
Yes, totally an 80s tone.
I would say that other piece over there, the other little strong base, is Heritage Green also, I think.
Yeah,
Those
these
two
two
are
are the
the
same
same.
colors.
Yeah.
And they're the same mold. They're just swung.
You've got to be sharp on looking at differences in colors, because Fenton would have a pink color at one time and it would have one name, and then 20 years later they would make almost the same pink color and it would just be a little bit different and it would have a different name and different color code.
So like we were talking about earlier, how the same original mold piece and how it's fashioned differently to finish it. So those you can tell
And
the
if you look
base.
really close, you can see the same pattern down there at the
Yeah,
bottom.
right down here,
Right
there's a
above the
leaf,
front of
there's
the
a
marine.
little leaf kind of design in there. I agree with you. I'm gonna go looking for this is Fenton?
That's right.
Now, I didn't know that.
That's
We got a stump.
that may be a factory sample.
Well, it's got
Or
a,
is that one different?
I think that's a ground
That one
bottom.
may be different.
I don't think this one's Fenton.
I don't think it is.
That one, that one is the lookalike of these.
Yes.
There is one that is in the purple that looks like that, and I don't have that bowl with me. I swapped the two.
Because we had this in a couple different colors when we first got those in on consignment.
Yes, and there isn't one that looks more like that.
Uh-huh. Aaron says he's on it. He's gonna look for one of those faces.
Okay.
Because I have
Hi,
found some
Peterson.
Rossi pieces down around in Florida, you know, like I said, up and down the East Coast there over the years.
Well, they actually, considering, I mean, like us here in Colorado, we have a hard time finding a lot of glass.
They're
The
hard to
further
find,
east we go, there's obviously more glass. I am actually really surprised how much glass they find in Florida.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think
used to
it's because
love to
lots
go
of people
down. I
move.
would set up
Yeah,
at
they
Rennie
move there.
Goose and several glass shows during the winter, and I would spend in between the time of the shows just hitting all the thrift shops and the antique shops, secondhand shops.
Mhm.
I'd come, I wouldn't even be trying to put that stuff out for sale.
Mhm.
I'd come back home most times loaded down more, and I had a
From
ton
Florida?
from Florida.
Oh,
Most
wow.
time I'd come down loaded down more than what I had sold, and I would sell a massive amount while I was down there for about 2 months.
Now, do you know George, who did the book for Treasure Craft? Can't remember his last name off the top of my head. Anybody throw it in? I know Katie knows. It's upstairs next to my bed, where my books are supposed to be, so I can read them before I go to sleep every night. George Higbee. Do you recognize that name?
I recognize Higby name, but I don't know him.
Okay, so he does a lot of shows in Florida and then the other coast as well, up in Washington, and he's based out of Kentucky. So yeah, his name on social media is the Antique Nomad, but I don't know if you know that one yet.
No, I don't know that one. I
Yeah.
don't know that one.
So
Because I'm on Facebook barely. You know, okay?
you know, we're pushing you right into this technology age, aren't we,
Yeah.
John? A little kicking and screaming sometimes. All right, what
Okay.
do we got going on here?
This is that's the Wild Rose Overlay and the bubble optic. Beautiful pattern.
This is huge and heavy.
And whenever they was blow whenever they was gathering it, they would have to take the gather and pick it with an ice pick to get those bubbles in it.
Really?
And Bill Fenton, he was pretty much of a joker.
How did they
They-
get them so symmetrical like that?
They would just go, well, you watch Dave Fetty whenever he's doing something like that with the ice pick or something there, whenever he's doing the bubble optic there or the control bubbles, and it's something the same deal. But what Bill Fenton, somebody was asking how they got that, and he said, well, they blow it underwater, and I have to get those bubbles in it, and I have to wash them with a glass bottom bowl.
Good sense of humor.
Yeah, the wild sense of humor.
Yeah. Okay, what's this one?
That's a spiral optic. That's from the 1930s. That's what, I can't remember the name of the mold number, but I always call it the flying saucer
Yes, we
mold.
dubbed it the UFO.
They used that as a lot as a lamp part, and then they would also call it a rose bowl.
Yeah, I think there's a Cranberry Overlay, opalescent one over there in about the same shape. On
Yeah.
that lamp.
And there's two sizes of that. That's the regular size. There is a size about half that is really hard to find.
Oh, I don't think I've seen the smaller one.
I've got a peach blow. I've had a cranberry opalescent one in it. Trying to think of the other one. I gave Frank 2 of them, one peach blow and one cranberry opalescent years ago that was in the museum for many years. Because he had never saw the little one, and he had to go back to factory records and look for it.
Speaking of a museum, is there a Fenton factory museum?
No, not anymore.
Okay, so but there is a West Virginia.
Museum of Glass
Museum
at
of Glass.
Weston, West Virginia, that has a large amount of Fenton.
Mom and I were there last summer.
Yeah, Oglesby in Wheelings, West Virginia, has a nice selection of Fenton. I think the West Virginia State Museum down in Charleston has some Fenton in it.
Okay.
I'm not, if I remember right, I can't think of the curator's name. He used to come and do talks at Weston whenever I would be able to be over there. And then he did a couple for the NFGS whenever I was there. And I remember him talking about Fenton being there in the State Museum.
Now, I just lost it. When remember Mom did the research on how many West Virginia glass companies that used to exist? Do you have any recollection of how many there used to be?
I don't. There used to be an unfathomable amount. I'm going to say Dean 6 because me and him, we used to talk about this whenever he was at Weston. We ran together quite a bit. And I'm going to say 600 to 700.
Yeah, so
different glass
between West
factories.
Virginia and Ohio.
No, just in West Virginia.
Just for West Virginia, but I mean that's
There probably would be another
majority
couple
of
of hundred in Ohio, and probably another. I'm going to say a good 25 to 30 in Indiana, and a few in Illinois.
okay.
And when Becky was talking about the research her mom did, there is a book out there by Dean Sixton. I can't think what it's called.
Yeah, Mom.
Yeah, he has all the glass companies listed in that book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember what it's called?
Not off the top of my
She
head.
loves doing all that research and finding
And then
out about all like the
people-
genealogy.
People
of the
don't
glass
think
companies.
about it. There was a lot of glass companies over in Pennsylvania too.
Yeah.
And then there are the decorating companies. which
Yeah.
is a
And
whole different-
and that's ones that actually made glass. It's not the ones that bought from other companies and decorated.
Right? It's a great museum, Katie. It really is nice. It's small, but they
It's
have a
ve-
large volume of
Yeah.
glass.
It's very well. Right now, even to the point, I'm not trying to be derogatory, discriminating, but if I had to choice, somebody said, let's go to a glass museum, I had a choice of going to Corning or
Okay.
going to Weston, I would go to Weston.
Really?
Because that's my time period of glass, 20th
Okay,
century
okay.
American glass.
I know
Where
Mom
Corning
wants to go to
covers
Corning,
all.
too.
It's interesting. Don't get me wrong on that. It's interesting, but it's not the type of glass that I look for and that I
Okay.
like.
And I know they have a really pretty good representation of the companies across the board,
Oh, yeah.
existing and non-existing, obviously, anymore as well. So, yeah, Peterson, there's been so many different glass companies in and out of existence, and then they'd merge and they'd fight and separate again, and it would go on and on. So,
That one is Cambridge.
No, it's not.
Oh, it isn't. Oh, wait a second. I know what one that one is. I'm sorry about that.
We are still in
I saw Farberware.
Uh-huh.
so this is a liner basically that
Yeah,
they
the-
made.
The stainless steel liner.
Yeah.
That is Fenton. I can't think what pattern they call that.
It's Silvertone.
Is it
This the other
Silvertone? Okay.
Silvertone. It's like this.
Okay. So
And I'm
you
kind of the
see-
same way
can you
like
bring
I
it
am
back?
by the newer items. Whenever you get pre-1940, I kind of get dumb on some of that stuff pretty
So
quick.
you can see like the veining here on each of these petals. That's like the veining in this all together. It's just a little bit smaller, and they call it the same pattern.
And they did that in the amethyst or purple, which is just gorgeous.
It is. We have some and it's packed for conventional.
Yeah. This is not similar to the cabbage leaf or the leaf one, right? It just kind of looks reminiscent of
Yeah.
it. Okay.
They would, like I said, glass companies would copy each other,
Mhm.
or the same glass company would see a piece that they had made 40 years before. Let's see what we can come up with as a variant that would come close to this there.
Yeah.
And they would even copy themselves.
Right. Yeah, they go back and revisit something that was pretty
Yeah.
popular.
And Fenton did that a lot.
The peacock vases are probably the most.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, they're very
And they had to recreate all the peacock vases whenever they started doing them from the 70s on.
So you can see the whole thing. And I'm going to bring it up close. This is in a French opalescent, so it's a clear with the opalescent in it. And you can see it's similar, but not the same. Do we have examples of Burmese?
Yeah, one or two.
Because I don't think we've shown. Oh, you know what? On the other color that is color sensitive, Rosaline.
Oh, yeah, Rosaline, very much.
I think I just.
Because we were talking about the 1930s colors and we didn't really get into the later.
Yeah,
colors.
well, we get sidetracked.
We did.
Shiny squirrel. And it's not like there's not like 7 different paths we can take
Right.
to explain this as well.
And the
So,
different variations of her.
Okay. The picture is Burmese. It's from the 90s. Actually, both of them is the second formula Burmese. They worked from the mid 50s all way up to 1970 before they finally got the Burmese formula perfected. The sad story about that, Charles Gold was the chemist that worked on that, and he worked his heart out on it. I had seen sample pieces lined up by dates where and color samples where they was almost getting it, and it was almost like a watercolor. It would just muddy out, and they would have to start in again. And he finally got it there, and I think it was in the fall of '69. He's very excited. He came in. He said, I got a little bit more tweaking to do on it. I'll be back tomorrow. He told Frank Fenton. He went out to play a game of handball, and he collapsed and died on the handball court that afternoon.
So all of his knowledge and where he was.
Well, he had it all down, but then they was able to keep on, and they finally got it tweaked out there. They had it that close. But like I said, you worked for that long, you never do really get to see it. And that was the original formula for Burmese. It had so much uranium and the chemical waste in it. EPA got onto them in the early 80s. They said, you're going to have to do something. They had to discontinue Burmese for a couple of years. They brought it back out. It came out much more creamier color, and the definition in between the pink and the custard was more ran together more. But with that formula, they was never ever really able to use it to impress pieces. But with that new formula, they was able to do it, make it with impress pieces. That's whenever they started making animals in Burmese.
Yeah, they're saying it just goes to show you need to live for today. You just never
Do
know.
you have a piece of the '70s time period Burmese around there? Like Maple Leaf or Roses on Burmese or Scenic?
So here's another question. I know we have a whole 12 people watching, which we love and appreciate. Thank you, everybody, for watching and hanging in there with us. We want to do some sales. Obviously, we have some glass, and it's not all just for show and tell. Some of it we're going to be packing up because we have the Fenton Gala we're going to. We have the Fenton Conventions we're going to. So obviously, we have to keep a lion's share of it for that, so we have enough product for those shows. But we definitely have glass that is going to be up for sale. So going forward, this is one of the venues here on YouTube that we really are looking forward to being able to sell on.
That is a piece of green Burmese.
I'll bring that one up a little. Lotus Mist.
That was
is what they call it.
Developed, and it came out during the 95th anniversary in 2000.
And it's not showing up as green as it is.
It is a very pretty color.
I'm gonna
I always thought that was.
This one. Let's see if we can get the two. So you can see how much more yellow the regular Burmese is, and then this one is the what mist?
Lotus Mist.
Lotus Mist. I always want to call it Sea Mist.
No, it's Lotus Mist. Sea Mist green is completely different.
I always say it wrong, and Barb yells at me. No, Lotus Mist. You can kind of see the difference there between the two.
And then they have a blue Burmese, which is almost a lavender color.
So it goes from that pink to the blue color. It's really pretty. Okay. Thank you, Katie.
This is a piece of Gunderson that's coming up.
Katie says this is
This is blue Burmese, but it is a piece of Gunderson blue Burmese, which that's a whole nother ball of wax. It was made out in New Jersey.
And it looks quite different because it has a shiny finish, and these other three pieces have a satin finish.
But in these, you have the blue that goes up to the blush.
Yes. Burmese is like the fancy Fenton stag glass. Slag glass. Oh, it's really fancy because it is the Burmese also the heat sensitive as well.
Burmese is very heat sensitive.
So there's
custard with ruby.
Go ahead.
It's mostly custard with ruby, and the ruby would go out to the outer edges.
Mm-hmm. That's why you have that
Because
pink.
it's a heavier glass. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, that's why there's barely any of them that are the same.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because it's the heat sensitive and it changes with every time it's poured. All right, let me see what other comments we have here. I have the blue Fenton glass advertising piece like that. Yeah,
You're
the
lucky.
logo pieces.
You're very lucky if you have that blue Burmese.
The logos have become extremely popular for collectors
There's some
right now.
collectors that would almost kill for a certain color logo.
Well, and it's a great way to be able to get all the different, or many of the different
Yeah,
colors.
because
have been
all the-
poured.
all they didn't make the logos in all the different colors that they were. They only started doing the logos like that in the probably from about 1980 on. There.
Now, Aaron, is it the blue Burmese or is it the periwinkle blue? Or because he's saying it is. He just says blue. Is it cobalt? I mean, they made it in lots of different colors, but yeah. So I mean, this is the pretty.
Oh, this is a
there you
pretty
go.
one. This is a pretty one. This is this is periwinkle.
That's our
go in my collection.
Barb likes periwinkle.
I do like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Katie's saying it's forgot to be the prize of her collection. Oh, he's saying it's cobalt. So is yours like this?
Opaque cobalt or transparent cobalt?
Is this one? Oh goodness, they're gonna sit and riddle you with all the names. This is the heat sensitive periwinkle blue. So it looks a little bit like a slag, but you can't see through it, so it's opaque. It just says yes, a cobalt. So, all right. Does anybody else have any other questions? Do you have anything else that you were thinking about putting up? We're at almost 2 hours. Yeah,
And is there
Peterson,
anything-
it's pretty.
Is there anything anybody would like to see on future videos? Time periods or class?
Yeah, I mean,
companies
we
or-
were probably, I mean, we didn't even, we mostly just touched on Fenton.
Yeah.
I know we also have
There's so many other types of glass.
depression
kinds
glass,
of glass.
and Victorian glass.
There's your handmade elegant glass.
elegant glass.
And
Yeah.
what I call handmade glass in general, which covers Imperial, Westmoreland.
Yeah, we
20th
could
century
probably talk glass any and all times and never cover the same thing twice.
Yeah. We can
So-
do this every day for a couple hours.
Welcome again to my world. What I normally do is go there. I'm like, and I don't even ask anymore. You know, is this good? Should I? You know, I just ask. I'm buying this, right?
Yeah.
That's usually the question.
That's what I try to tell people whenever they come into my booth at Antique Show. If you like it, just buy it.
Yeah, I know enough to be dangerous and to go. I know it's something good. And Barb's like, dang it, I should just not have told her how much that piece is worth.
I need to learn to just say, I'll double your money.
Mhm. Sometimes that's it. So
That's the main thing. If you like it,
Buy it.
if it speaks to you, it speaks to your heart, buy it and
Mhm.
enjoy it. Don't worry about getting rid of it. They just
about-
enjoy it till the time that you go. Somebody else will come along eventually after you're gone and pick it up and like it too.
well, and the best things about some of these collections is as your taste change, you can just rotate it out and start a new collection of something
I've
you
got
like later down
friends-
the line.
I got friends in Illinois that has a 15-room mansion in a small town outside of Springfield. She still don't have enough room for all of her Fenton, and she has to rotate it with the seasons.
Oh, she rotates it with the seasons?
Yeah,
Oh
The
my
colors with the seasons.
Oh, you mean this one from when I said just buy it?
So that's a goodie.
Yeah, let's show this one first.
This is one of Becky's earlier just buy it.
It's hard to
That's-
tell. So this is
L.E. Smith.
Mhm. No.
Or is it Viking?
No, it's not Viking. I know that. It's Smith.
It's Smith, okay.
It's a swung
That's
base.
what I was thinking. I can't think of what color they call that, lavender or lilac.
Lilac or lavender, and it's a heat sensitive because it's like the bittersweet.
Yeah,
You get
it's
the variations
beautiful piece.
in the color, kind of looks
And you
like a
hardly
slag.
ever see those big swung bases like that.
Now this, mind you can't see the whole
That
thing.
is just to die for, really.
It's a short one.
Yeah, and it is actually a short one considering the size that it
But they
is.
call it what, the big butt or something like that
Yeah.
is affectionately called by the size of the bottom of the base. And I know that there's some people that just collect this shape or this time period in the bittersweet and the lilac and those colors. What is that? The mid-mod kind
Yeah,
of vibes.
mid-mod.
Yeah. So this is one of those ones where I picked it up and I picked it from another glass friend. And he's like, you did not sell that for that $600 on eBay that I just saw. And I said, no, but I could list it for that now if it doesn't sell soon.
And that's
So,
the piece
yeah.
I always dream about, walking into a garage sale and seeing for $1.50.
Right?
I just grab it up and smile and get on out of there as quick as
Somebody I
possible.
just saw on Facebook posted one similar to this that was spray painted gold. And it
Why?
was bittersweet underneath it after they got it all cleaned off. And I know my friend locally, Kim, she picked up one that was like a 2-3 foot one, and it was the clear blue underneath the gold
I was
spray.
gonna ask
Oh, that would be pretty. That would be. I got lucky and I found the large and the Fostoria heirloom several years ago and the pink opalescent like
Oh,
that
yeah.
one.
Peterson, you got
And I think she had $5 on it, and it was like 3 o'clock in the day at a garage sale. And I was just like, yes.
Right, Peterson? There's some people that have been collecting like all their lives. They've accumulated some pretty amazing collections, and some of these estates are now starting to come up for sale.
Yeah.
Well, and there's some people that just bought it because they liked it back in the 60s and it was cool. And then it went to the basement or the attic, and now their kids are like, oh, this is mom.
Yeah, some people just don't like it, but you know, it's that same old thing. And you know, surround yourself with the stuff you like and stuff you love. And
my trouble is I like glass, I like pottery, I like china, I like dinnerware, I like linens, textiles, toys.
Yeah.
Prints, pictures.
You know, Peterson, I think coming out of the 70s, a lot of people spray painted those swing bases because they didn't like the colors that they came.
I'll tell you a good story about this.
Okay.
And I had to laugh. I laughed my butt off when this happened because this came. He's now, what is so funny, he's now a nationally known farm toy and antique tractor auctioneer. But I knew him whenever he was about 12 or 13 years old. Even to the point he would outrun me at a rummage sale on his bicycle, buy depression glass in front of me, hop on his bicycle. Mom will be by a little bit and pick this up. I'm going on to another rummage. But anyhow, me and him was standing at an auction one day, and I had already looked into a box, and they had a pink depression glass made for the canna, which was worth about $300 at that time, spray painted with that kind of multicolored wax. And I had looked down there and saw that. And he was big on depression glass.
Yeah.
This kid was. And he was standing next to me talking, and he was one of these real nervous, jiggly ones. Anyhow, he literally had his hand inside the flap of the box, shaking it back and forth.
Yeah.
The canna had his hand on the stopper of the canna, shaking it back and forth. Box came up for auction along with about 4 other boxes. I got it for $2. I yanked the canna out. I said, I don't want anything else. I just want this piece. His mouth dropped open. I always said there was a pile right behind. He never has forgave me for that yet. Yeah. But that just goes to show you how long ago, because this was back in the early 80s, and that thing had probably been spray painted with that wax stuff probably back in the late 50s, early 60s.
And I think the collections come and go too. I think that some of the things that are coming more popular again are the.
Well, I'm noticing depression glass is coming back big time.
Depression glass is coming back. Anything that glows seems to be the big thing.
It's always that always had, even when glass wasn't that collectible 15 years ago. Anything that was Vaseline, I would still put out because it would sell. Somebody liked it because it glowed. We
have a guy, mom and I have had booths at a place called Willowstone here in Colorado Springs. And when she had a big glass booth, it was 10 foot by 20 foot. We would have a guy come in once a month or so, and he'd come in with his Geiger counter and just sit and tick, 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 everything that he thought would glow. And that was his entertainment, was to walk around the antique store and find the things that set off his Geiger counter. He didn't even carry around a flashlight, a blacklight, to see what it looked like. Yeah.
He just wanted to hear a tick.
He just wanted to hear a tick. Yep. So what else is coming back? What else are you seeing coming back right now?
Let's see. Fairy lights are coming back.
Oh, fairy lights are so big right now. And one of the things I'm seeing that I don't like is they're taking milk glass and spray painting it like to look like jade, to make it look like another color. So they're taking a cheap milk glass piece and spray painting it the aqua color, the pink color, or whatever color they want.
But they have been doing that for years.
I know, but I'm seeing it in the antique malls.
I know. I got a set a friend of mine gave me for my birthday of crystal English hobnail that was painted, spray painted and fired, I think by the factory, jade green.
And
so
in the 30s, they meant to do, and then it was actually scented with black.
Huh.
Boy, there's a set of 6 goblets and set of 6 square plates, and talk about drop dead gorgeous.
That's different.
Well, we have a piece right up here.
Okay. I'm gonna read comments when you pull that. Yeah, Katie from Vintage and Vinyl, she says she loves depression glass. Katie, do you like specific patterns? Because like mine is that I collect was my grandmother's pattern, and it's a green cameo, which is a ballerina dancer, and yes, it just so happens to also glow. I have an entire case of it because my mother has collected it for me from one single
You're
piece
lucky.
that survived
You're lucky.
from when I was about
Well, some of
5
those
years
cases
old.
is almost impossible to find.
I know, Mom. There were the cone-shaped goblets.
I
She's
know.
like-
I've had them before,
We found 2 at St. Joe's,
and I sold them
and she's
too.
like, "Buy them. They're chipped, but you still need to buy
I
them." I'm
sold
like,
them about 15 years ago whenever I was doing Round Top, Texas to a dealer out of
Mhm.
Pennsylvania. She's about the same age as me, and she started in whenever she was a kid, and she said, I've had all shapes of cameo goblets, but I never, and tumblers, but I never have had those.
"Yeah." So she's like, "You need
She
to
was a
buy
bigger
them."
glass dealer than I am there. And she just snagged them. She was just tickled to say that she had them in stock one time.
Yeah. Well, I have 2 of them now. They're chipped, but I got them.
I've got
So-
some princess ones in that shape.
I got princess ones at that auction in the middle of the cornfield. I got 3 of them. So I have that too. Oh yeah, this one. So tell us about this one, Barb. Or
So that's-
John.
Go ahead.
Either
Is that
one of you.
Westmoreland? I think
That's Lancaster. I
it's at Lancaster, okay.
Because it's over the clear glass.
Mhm.
But that is fired on, been painted and then fired on and then accented with black.
And see, I picked this one up because I like teal.
I just always like the shape of that
So you
one.
can really see the color through that,
Mhm.
through the center there, that it's clear glass and then just painted. Now, I mean, like this, I expect pieces like this to be colored. I don't expect like solid, like clear glass, I expect it. But not like reds, greens, blues for somebody amateurishly to spray paint them to change
Yeah.
them to match a different decor. That's what I don't expect.
Yeah. That's where you know your items, get to know your dealers that you deal with regular.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to them. Most of them that's very knowledgeable is willing to share the knowledge because they want to see the glass
Mhm.
collecting go on.
Yes.
Because their stuff, because if they're a glass dealer, 9 times out of 10, they're a pretty big collector themselves, and they want to see the stuff go on and retain its value, so their stuff will be worth
Well,
something on
most
down the
dealers,
line.
I think, are collectors first
Yeah.
and dealers second.
I was kind of the opposite. I collected other stuff for a long time before
Okay.
I
Well,
started
Barb
in
and
on
I, we
glass.
grew up with collecting and dealing. So it's just something that, I mean, I'll speak for myself. I didn't know people's houses didn't look like this all the time.
Yeah.
This is what was
I-
normal, was
I quite
collections everywhere.
honestly went, as they say, backwards, because I got started in business. My parents wasn't a bit interested in antique glass or anything like that. I got to dealing in other stuff, in glass, because I had collected other stuff, and I was using glass to finance my other collections.
Well, that's it.
And then I didn't get started into collecting glass till the early 90s. About 10 years later, my mother finally got started in collecting glass.
Yeah, and my
She got more brutal and more serious than I did.
Yeah, my parents were antique dealers, or my dad refinished furniture. My great aunt and uncle and my grandmother all did depression glass shows.
Mhm.
I mean, from the very little growing up, that's how I learned to wrap glass. We'd always come on the last day of the show, and we'd sit and pack up all their glass for
Right.
them and haul it for them. So that's how we grew up, at auctions, at garage sales, estate sales, all the time. So, Katie says that she collects all of them. She loves Indiana Tea Room. She
I
loves
do
all
too.
the
That's always been
patterns.
Pyramid always been some of my favorite in depression glass.
And Indiana Cracked Ice.
Well, that's a pretty pattern. That's a tough pattern to find too.
Yeah. Yvonne, who's a local YouTuber here, she says she likes the Cubist pattern
Uh-huh.
from some of the vintage glasses, and then it also mixes well into the 70s and the Art Deco style
Right,
as
mhm.
well. So yeah, I mean, was it Jeanette Cubist, or is it American?
Well, there was American Fostoria, and then the Jeanette Cubist was the handmade glass that copied American Fostoria.
And what same designer? And what's the other company that made that cube pattern?
Oh, Indiana Whitehall later on.
Whitehall.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
well, that's pretty.
Yvonne says her oldest daughter just
What's
got
that?
some of the Jeanette In the
Indiana?
in the smoky color. In the
It's not
smoky
the Indiana.
color. Oh yeah.
That's
Here,
pretty.
Katie. This is what you're talking about? The Indiana, the crackle, where it looks crackle, but it's not. It's the pattern pressed into the glass
Yeah.
versus it actually
That's
being
beautiful.
And I always,
crackle glass.
I always swap that with the Ellie Smith pattern. That's
And this is an
so
amber,
crackle.
correct?
Mhm.
Let me read some comments.
Yeah, I love the Victoria heirloom. I've always been some of my favorite.
Peterson says she tends to go
Talk,
towards the mid-century
talk about if you
modern.
like mid-mod shapes, that was completely mid-mod.
The Viking stuff is in the Epic line. It's
Yeah. Mhm.
fantastic. The colors in their glass and the clarity of their
Yeah.
glass and the weight of their glass is just amazing.
And that's one thing I grew up with. My grandparents had a gift shop in Denver. So I grew up, you know, Viking Georgian was our day-to-day glass and the ruby. And then I must have been in college. And I was going through some boxes in the basement and I had one labeled junk drawer. There was a bunch of stuff out of my grandma's house. Well, a bunch of it was the bottom kitchen junk drawer. And then there's a Viking Epic console set in ruby in there too, because my mom didn't like it. So it just got tossed in the junk drawer box.
They also like Fostoria coin and Fostoria heirloom. Fostoria heirloom is beautiful glass.
Oh,
because of
that's
the
just absolutely
opalescence.
wonderful. I love coin, especially if you combine it into blue or emerald green. I could get hooked on keeping that for myself so easy. I just try not to get.
Picasso Cat says she's finally just started picking up glass herself. Ellie Smith's making something called
Cracky,
Cracky.
Mhm.
Yeah, Peterson, that's my kind of junk.
So like I said,
Yeah.
when you get in glass, there's very little, whether it's foreign, U.S. made, or whether it's new, old, or whatever. There's very little that I don't like.
Well, I think there's just so much out there. There's something for everyone.
Yeah.
And there's so many colors. I mean, obviously, there's
I
popular
like a
colors.
lot of crystal glass. I like
Mhm.
there's a lot of patterns in the old, because I like Victorian.
Yes.
A lot of patterns in the old Crest early American pattern glass. I just absolutely love, whether the
Well-
geometrics or whether they're still scenes or animals or whatever. I kind of I like that there.
Now I came across a bowl. I didn't buy it. Don't yell at me.
Shame on you.
I know. It was clear royal lace.
Yeah, that's beautiful pattern.
But it was just an oval.
But it just never has got the
Vegetable bowl.
recognition that it should get because everybody's
Good.
always kind of went, ooh, it's crystal.
Yeah, because they make such a beautiful cobalt
Yeah.
and a beautiful pink.
But you know what is
And a
pretty?
beautiful ruby.
I always thought,
Yes.
I saw one lady years ago do a display at the Depression Glass of crystal and cobalt royal lace and talk about
It's
drop dead
Yeah.
gorgeous.
You know what else I like in the cobalt and the ruby is the American Sweetheart.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because the American Sweetheart I grew up eating on is like those were our Sunday dishes.
hmm
And that stuff is beautiful.
Oh, yeah. I've always loved that pattern too.
Mom has the same story that she tells
There
over
was
and
a-
over again, but we
There
all
were
know
several
the story
different people
about
I knew years ago around St. Louis area collect the Momex, which is like the white American Sweetheart. And then they collected cobalt and ruby for a red, white, and blue table. And that was fun.
That'd be pretty.
Yeah,
it.
that one of them did a display at the glass show one year of the red, white, and blue. And they
Yeah.
had the big,
The big bowl in red.
no, they had it in Monex.
Oh.
They had it in Monex, but they had all the other small pieces, and then they had some other Monex in with it. And they had the shakers and Monex, and
Astoria Baroque. That's at
yeah.
Yep.
Fleur de
Do you
Lis.
collect it in color or do you collect it in crystal?
I think we've seen most of it around here in crystal. And maybe amber.
Every once in a while, you all find a
I've
piece
got
of
a yellow
blue, but it's very seldom.
I think I've got a
Matter of
Yellow
fact, I've
green
got the
right now.
mustard in blue right now in stock, which is just as
That's
cute as a button.
fancy.
Yeah, just as cute as a button.
Fostoria Flame.
Yeah, you don't find very much of that. I love that.
Looks like
I
Katie
love
likes
Fostoria glass,
all
too.
together.
I could very easy, if it wasn't for Fenton, get into Fostoria and Cambridge really hot and heavy
Cambridge is
myself.
I like
And
playing Heisey.
I like Heisey too. And then we talk about Lariat by Heisey. That's
Yeah.
what
Yeah, there's somebody collects Lariat.
Mom collects Lariat.
She collects-
You collect Lariat?
I like Lariat with Charlton decoration on it.
both Yvonne and I have found pieces at the new thrift store in the last week of lariat. They're like putting out one piece a day. It seems like
They're going to
I
dole it
found
out
one.
to you.
Yeah, and then like the next day, Yvonne found one.
Yeah.
She found like the little bowl. I said, "That's lariat." She said, "You didn't tell me it was Heisey." I was like, "Well, I can't
That's a
keep
neat
track of all
pattern.
of
That's a
them."
fun pattern to collect.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to kick you.
And we were talking about glass museums a while ago. If for anybody that ever goes to Ohio, the Heisey Museum is well worth going to. The Cambridge
Museum
is
is wonderful. Kiffin, I never have been up there, but
Where's
they say
the
they have a
Heisey
nice museum up in
Newark.
Kiffin,
New Jersey,
Newark,
Ohio.
Ohio. So I-
North and east out of Columbus, just a
I
little
know
bit.
Mom wants to go to the Cambridge Museum.
Yeah. I never have been, even with living down there and just below Cambridge, about 40 miles, never had the opportunity to go to
Last year
Cambridge.
they had
Still haven't been to the Cambridge
short-
Museum?
No, I never have been to Cambridge.
I've been to Cambridge twice, and John has gone.
They were going to be closed by the time we got there
Yeah.
because they had COVID hours last year and they closed down.
You got to go to Cambridge.
Oh, yeah.
It's fun. They let you color impressions of etching plates, and Cambridge is a
so-
very hands-on museum.
Here's a question for you. Here's a newer glass company. It doesn't exist anymore. Newer. It was started in the 90s. Have you heard of Fire and Light?
No, I haven't heard of that.
Well, you should look into that. They did recycled glass out of California.
Okay.
But I think they were only in production for about 20 years.
Not very long.
And that stuff is going just
Crazy.
skyrocket prices
Okay, I
on it.
don't think I've even seen a piece
I-
of it.
I
in
can-
place.
Well, Yvonne, let me pull a piece of Fire and Light and show you. Because I know where that is.
I just had one, and I sold it on Etsy.
Okay,
I've got two pieces.
sounds interesting.
This is Yvonne's big thing. She keeps finding it around here in Colorado. Why?
Well, you
there's
see,
so
that's
much
the
of it,
deal.
don't
I can
know.
come out here and find stuff I never see in Illinois or on out east there in Ohio and
Right, Yvonne?
Pennsylvania. But I can come out here and find it,
Okay, first of all,
which is why I make treks out here every so often.
Right?
Oh, that's kind of pretty.
So
That is
I'll
pretty.
show it to the people here in just a second. Yeah, she just picked up another piece of Fire and Light. I don't know what, a couple weeks ago. So I have two pieces. I have this one, which is a pedestal candle stand, from my
Well,
understanding.
that's fun.
And then this one, which is a little bit smaller. So my understanding here, we'll hold it in front of this camera so it's white, is it's kind of this dimply look to
Yeah.
it. Is one of
Finished
the,
off pretty.
yeah, and it's heavy glass. And they made goblets too,
Well, I bet that would.
and tableware.
Well, you see, and people that likes mid-mod stuff, Erickson Glass in Ohio, and that's not a well-known glass company, and they did a lot of controlled bubble stuff items, and they did, all their shapes were very mid-mod.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's something else, but I never see. Every once in a while, I'll find a piece in St. Louis area. I'll see some pieces around through Ohio and shop. I never hardly ever see it anyplace else.
I found this in Colorado. I mean, and I know Yvonne, most of hers, I think she's found all of hers here in town, even.
These I
The ones
found
I've
down in
seen.
Colorado.
Yeah, you're right. You found it.
And
in
like
Colorado
10 to 1,
also.
they had somebody that had a gift shop that sold it here.
I bet you that's it. And the other new one that's coming around is called Glass Baby.
I never heard of that.
John with the Denver Depression Glass Club, he finds that left, right, and sideways up in Denver, and I never see it.
And it's like, I don't know, like a votive kind of shape that they like the top of a goblet is what I'm seeing most of their stuff
Yeah.
that I've seen in the
I always
videos.
think they look like kind of a short, fat tumbler.
Yeah, Yvonne, your video is pretty thorough on the Fire and Light. It helps out a lot, especially since their website for Fire and Light is not, it like comes and goes. Sometimes they'll have it up and sometimes they'll bring it down. What's nice about it when it's up is that you can see all the different kinds of shapes and different colors that they made. So you can at least start like knowing the shapes as to
Yeah,
what to
well, that's-
look for.
On just about any glass company that you're really interested, if you study your shape, if it's etch glass, study the type of etchings they'll do, and you'll learn the type of etchings one company will do as opposed to another company.
And yours was green too, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was the same green.
I think mine was a little bit
Darker?
grayer green than
And
that.
yours was shaped, it was like a tree.
It was a
like
redwood.
a redwood? I would just thought around in Colorado an evergreen tree. They know Christmas
Well, it wasn't
tree.
evergreen, but it
Mhm.
happened to be a redwood because
Yeah.
they're out of California, I'm guessing.
Yeah, What is that? Sorry, I can't read. I need to go up. Yeah, she needs to go update her video because it's been over a year since she put out her video about it. That's about $300 to $400 back. He's got sitting right there.
Okay, interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's
Now
why
we give-
I feel like I need to just hoard
Okay,
it
from
and
now
know
on,
that I
guys,
have
when
it for a while.
Okay, now on, guys, no matter what it is, whenever we see a piece of glass, we just pick it up and we learn about it later.
That's what
My
I've been
rule
doing.
is if it costs less than a hamburger, just buy it.
That's what I tell my mom is I have a gambling price. And
Yeah.
if it's within a certain price range, or I know like if I'm buying it for someone I know who likes something, that they'll for sure repay me at least my gambling price,
Right.
then I pick it up. And then there's other things that, you know,
Well,
you gotta
I
save for
also
shows.
have two
Yeah.
shelves there in the back room of items that I've been researching and trying to find information out for 20 years, and I still don't know
Yeah.
what stuff is.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
there's
have
some
one
things that are
depression
hard.
glass space that I've talked to several dealers, and a couple have been like, "Oh yeah, I had one of those in stock once. Could never figure out
But
what
it
it
used
was."
to be me and Dean Six and Roy Ash would do the glass ID for the NFGS. And they used to always laugh, well, if those three don't know it, you ain't going to find it.
And when John says NFGS, it's the National Fenton Glass Society, which is one of the main Fenton collecting groups.
And the convention for that is coming up. What is the date for that?
It's July 24th, 25th, 26th
Yeah.
this year.
If you could get out there to Parkersburg, West Virginia, Marietta, Ohio area during that time, there'll be a lot of glass floating around and motel rooms. There's a little glass show. There's a lot of nice shops in that area. It's worth the trip.
No, because
Even if you don't go to convention, it's just worth the trip to be able to find glass. A lot of things that you'll never see again, especially if you like Fenton.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other glass out there too.
my pieces of fire and light are not. And that's why it was so hard to identify them, because we went with the color, same thing, color and shape to figure out what they were. But these pieces are not marked. Now your tree was marked
It was marked.
in an etch, basically like somebody's signing their signature on
Yeah.
the piece. Yeah. Hi Pam, how are you doing tonight? Thanks for joining us. Hey, we have 13 thumbs up, which is almost as many people as we have watching. That's amazing. So I know that well, do we have anything else? Any other questions or anything else we want to go with right now? We're over 2 hours at this point. But I mean, like I said, this is basically
been
our
fun. This has
everyday
been
normal
fun.
conversation.
Yeah, this has been fun.
So,
Belle.
I know
I
that,
may have to get Wacko and get on something like that.
and I'm sure if we invite you back, you'll come and do another.
Oh yeah,
sit-down
I
with us.
enjoyed this. But
Yeah.
I always love to talk about glass.
Yeah, I know. So, but hopefully in the next couple, I would say month or two after our major conventions and after what is it, July and August, after those things kind of settle down, I think we're hoping to be able to have some sales on YouTube as well. Because I mean, even though we have a lot of glass, we don't have enough inventory to do shows and all the venues we want to sell it at this point. Like you guys do over in Illinois, you have way more glass.
Well, I can't find that much Fenton over there anymore. It's just not out there. I see common pieces, and I look for the offbeat, more funky.
Yeah.
and
When he
crazy
says he
stuff.
can't find Fenton, it means he can't find the Fenton he wants to buy, not that he can't find Fenton.
Right? That's it. So
I have my status quo as to quality.
hey, now who says more isn't better?
You guys has always got good. Being out here, I don't know how you keep up the deal, because I honestly don't see that much out here. I'll find
But
I see a piece here, there, and yon every so often.
Yep, and it's not like you can walk in somewhere and there's an entire
But you know
booth and
what
you have
is-
to pick and
I have
choose
found
you
out
really
what is
want.
so aggravating. I can go to shops right and left through my area, about a 70, 80-mile radius. I don't see hardly anything unusual offbeat in Fenton at all. But let Barbara come into the area. It's like, hey guys, she's back. Let's all appear at the same time.
It's kind of fun.
Bree, the Fenton Convention is in Ohio,
Yeah,
Marietta,
West Virginia.
Marietta,
Virginia.
Ohio, Parkersburg, West Virginia.
not exactly Midwest.
Yeah. Punch up on the internet, nfgs.org, and you can find it, or punch up if you're on Facebook, punch up the National Fenton Glass Society.
So,
And you can get information both ways there.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for talking and joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Looking at all the pretties tonight, and hopefully lots of people will be able to watch the replay and get some of the finer points that we went over really fast. And I know there's just so much information to absorb in a quick time period. So yet again, that's why I have them on the phone and speed dial, and I'm saying, is this the one I want to take home? So thanks everybody for joining us tonight. We'll get to see you another time.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Guys.
Good night.